Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, everybody. I'm happy to say I've been to a lot of those restaurants, and seen a lot of those places, but there were a lot of new ones in there, so thanks for that. Again, not self-serving at all, but, sounds like the food experience on the coast, I think, has changed dramatically over the years, and I think it is just gonna continue to elevate, which is really nice especially for those of us that live here, but so thank you for that. That was fun. It was just nice to hear where people find their peace at. So we're gonna move into the agenda part of today, and I'm gonna have Director Bateman, our director for the Department of Land Conservation and Development, just kick us off, if she's ready.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. Good morning again, everyone. Brenda Bateman, Director of DLCD. Lisa, thank you for that icebreaker. That was very fun. I think I took some decent notes and I've got some new ideas. Just wanted to thank you, all of you, for sharing some of your secret spots with the rest of the group, and wanted to thank you all for your continued partnership in these uncertain times. So I just wanted to note now, now more than ever, this network of partners who care about coastal management is critical. And as we've all seen, our local, state, tribal, and federal partners, we fluctuate. Our budgets, our situations fluctuate and ebb and flow over time. And so I just think it's really neat that we can come together and support each other, and try to even that out and try to be a network that's there in support of each other. DLCD is the home of Oregon Coastal Management Program, and its land use goals underpin the work of OCMP and the work that you all are doing. I just wanted to note this morning that we recognize that coastal communities are facing all the challenges that encompass the entirety of our land use system, including housing and infrastructure and economic development, certainly natural hazards. And so I would say this group of all the planners and all of our partners you're touching all the goals, and you've got to keep them all in mind as you go about doing your daily work. So DLCD understands that. We just wanted to let you know that we're here and ready to be partners with you, and we're so glad to be in community with you today. So I'll stick around for a few minutes, and I'm just so pleased to see you all on the screen. Good morning.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm just gonna take a few minutes here. This will actually get us probably a little bit ahead of time. And talk a little bit about the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is federal funding and how it could trickle down to the work that we do within the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and then how that could have impacts on you all, because we are a networked program. All of you are part of the Oregon Coastal Management Program, and that makes us unique in all of the coastal management programs across the country. While they partner with local jurisdictions, we are the only state that actually includes local jurisdictions within our network, which means that your ordinances and comprehensive plans are included in the body of work that we carry forward, whether it's just normal day to day or if it's going through federal consistency. And for those of you that, especially that are new to the coast, that might be a new concept, because federal consistency only applies within coastal zones and therefore is only administered through coastal management programs. And so that's something we can talk to you more about. We've had several trainings. We can certainly direct you to some recorded trainings that we've done in the past, as well as set up some time to just chat with you, and come to your communities if this is something that you'd like to add to your regular planner network trainings. We can certainly do that as well. But by doing that, that gives our local communities, you all, the voice that otherwise would not be heard when we're talking about actions that have triggered by federal permits. So the Army Corps is issuing a permit, the Army Corps is doing an activity, so say dredging, uh, that allows your voice to be heard and to help shape how that project can look. And if it is not consistent with the enforceable policies that we've identified, that project can't go forward. And it is a powerful tool and a powerful incentive to have a coastal management program in a state. And I think that is definitely one of the pieces that we're going to really work to ensure continues to move forward. So when we talk about what's happening at the federal level, I had the opportunity to go back to Washington, D.C. at the end of March. And it's a time when the coastal management program managers and teams that they're able to bring come together and just talk about issues. You know, we have the business side of the Coastal States Organization, which is sort of the advocacy side for coastal management programs, an association, if you will. And so we have a business meeting and we talk about those issues that are kind of running across the landscape that we all share challenges or opportunities with. And then we have a day where we're meeting with partners. So that could include our National Estuary Program partners. So Christy's here with us today from the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership. The NEARS, and we have Sabra today from South Slough, so National Estuarine Research Reserves. So an opportunity for folks who are doing a lot of work that intersects and aligns with each other, coming together and then sharing what's happening in their various areas, sharing what's happening in the partnerships that have been created. It's really a very, very positive part of the meeting for sure. Just hearing all the great work that's happening around our coasts across the country and our territories. And then we spend a day where, for folks that can do it, we go and visit with our congressional delegation. And this year I went with our partner, the South Slough, and had an opportunity to meet with all but two of our congressional delegation and just talk about the coastal management program. They talked about South Slough and all the good work happening down there. And then I talked about the coastal management program and some of the challenges that we're facing, but even more so highlighting all of the great work that's happening on the Oregon coast. And as you can imagine, they're extremely supportive. Generally pretty well tuned in to what it is that we're doing on the coast, which is always nice. And very, very willing to, step out and advocate for the coastal management program, when needed. And this year, though, the tenor and tone is a little bit different in DC. And our last day of meetings was with NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is our primary funding source for the administrative side of the coastal management program, which are all the folks that sit in DLCD and work with you and that you heard from today. And the tone is a little less, positive in, as we were rounding out that week. And NOAA's facing some dramatic cuts. It's anticipated that in the not so distant future, NOAA's staffing complement will be cut by 50%, and that would affect the Office of Coastal Management. And that's significant. It affects, our ability to give and take information, timing of grants. So a lot of you have benefited from grants that we've received and then been able to provide awards out to the communities. Those kind of things are going to take longer. You can understand that all of the kind of ramifications of a reduction in workforce and how that affects, just how business gets done until things can even out a little bit. But then we're also talking about the potential for cuts to funding the coastal management programs generally. And as you know, Congress passed a continuing resolution through the end of this fiscal year, this federal fiscal year, which maintained generally the same budget as 2024. And that was passed in March. And now agencies are putting together spend plans. So, how they're going to take the money that they've been um, awarded and how they're going to divvy that up amongst all the various programs and administrative needs that they have as agencies. That was technically due on Monday, but I understand that that was not submitted, and that may not be entirely unusual. And so the expectation is that we will see a spend plan sometime in the next week. And then that goes to a committee that will review the plan and then approve it on behalf of Congress. Congress will not revisit each agency's spending plans. They provided the overall guidance for the budget. That's their job. And now these committees will be handling the approvals or not of each agency's spend plan. And then once that happens, and assume an approval, it'll go back to the agency, and then the agency will go through and do some final pieces. So, administrative costs are taken off of grant programs, for example, just like we all do. So the process, while a lot bigger and a little bit more convoluted, generally mirrors a lot of the same practices we have at the state and local levels. It's just it's the scale at which it happens that's a little different. And we are expecting cuts. We know that in the president's preliminary budget, which was leaked, that the president's budget has zeroed out, among other things, the coastal management program grants. It doesn't get rid of the coastal management programs, those are in statute, but it did recommend eliminating funding for the coastal management program. So we're kind of working on things at two fronts. We have this spending plan, which is going to take effect for us July 1st. And that's a little out of our control. We'll see how that plays out, but we are expecting cuts. We've been told to plan for 5 to 10%, but perhaps do some scenarios that take us out to 50%. Those are significant. And then as we move into the development of the fiscal year 26 budget that Congress is going to be moving forward, that's where we can have a little bit more influence. And so with that, you're going to see, hopefully, some outreach from us that's going to be asking if you're willing, among others, not just you all, to write us to sign on to a support letter for the coastal management programs. It's a pretty easy way to engage, but it is also something that you're going to have to run by your electeds most likely. And so we appreciate that, and we have no expectations, but we will be doing some outreach on that, and it's going to have a fairly short turnaround. And then as we go forward and are reaching out to our congressional delegation and highlighting the importance of the coastal management program and all of the work that you all do, we may be reaching out for some stories that you'd like to share and that you'd want our congressional delegation to know when we talk about the value of the coastal management program and this network of over 52 entities what it does and what it means for the coast. So you may be hearing from us on a number of different fronts. But we are going to be working actively to make sure, to the extent that we can, that we are giving you the service that you need and that we are being the partners in this process that we have been for the last 50 years almost. I know that's a lot, but that's really kind of what's first and foremost in our minds at this point. Well, in my mind, it's in everybody's mind, but it's one I've been dealing with. But why we're here today is to actually hear about a lot of the good stuff that's happening. And so, just kind of reinforcing why coastal management programs are so important, and all of the value that they add for our communities, all the work that you all do in ensuring that your communities are growing in a way that protects those vital natural resources that make our coast so unique and so special, just like we've heard, during the introductions, but also that balance of growth and economic development and meeting the social needs of our communities. It's a walk that you do, and all do it as gracefully as possible. And we are really happy to be partners with you as we move through some of these little more stressful times. Christy, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say that I strongly support the idea of a sign-on letter. The National Estuary Program, we have 28 locations around the country, so we're much smaller than the coastal program. And we did this, we sent it out to all 28. We gave it to folks to send out to their networks, and we collected over 2,800 signatures in less than a week. So with the size of the program, I imagine you guys can do a lot more than that. And it's just so super important then to be able to show that to the legislators.
Oh, thank you very much, Christy. I appreciate that. So that's where we're at. Are there any questions? Any thoughts? This is a safe place to just talk. That's why we have these meetings. And it's okay if you don't want to. Well, with that then, we've got a lovely agenda today. Mandy, can you pop it up for me just so we can go over it really quick and highlight where we're going to have the roundtable, because again, we broke it up. We're doing it a little bit differently this time. We'll see how this works, but so we are right on time. I do have a couple more things to add just in terms of department business, but we'll have a quick break just because we've been sitting here already for an hour and a half. And then we're going to have a quick update on the Coastal Non-Point Pollution Control Program, which for those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that our non-point program was disapproved back in 2015. And we've spent the interim years pulling together a package that will meet the needs of the state, but also EPA, who has oversight of the program. And Amanda's going to just touch on that a little bit more. And then we'll jump into the roundtable and we'll kick off. We'll have that first half and we'll see how we get through. And then we're giving everybody a break. It's always dangerous, but please come back. But we're going to just have a full hour for lunch and rest your eyes and go out for a walk or have some lunch, do what you need to do, catch up on emails, but please eat. And then Mandy, if you could scroll down a little bit. And then we're going to move into an update on our 309 assessment and strategies, which a lot of you have already heard about. And then you'll hear why we're hearing about it again. And we're going to get a Rocky Habitat Projects update on some great work that's been happening in the world of our marine conservation areas that have been designated and the management strategies that are being put forth there. And then we're going to have an update on Goal 5 cultural areas rulemaking, which has been going on for some time. So hopefully it won't be a new topic unless you're just coming. Hopefully it won't be a new topic to most folks, but this is a good opportunity to ask person authoring the rule to get firsthand any answers to questions you might have about it. We're going to have a quick legislative sessions update, which is probably not enough time, but we will. We can try to figure out if we can build in a little extra time if we need it. And then we're going to move back into the second half of the roundtable. And then we're going to wrap it up with update on the ERAPs, the Estuarine Resilience Action Plans, which a lot of you now will have participated in. And finally, update on the offshore wind energy roadmap and planning process, which is actively moving forward. And then we'll wrap up any take homes, that any homework we have or that we're going to be asking folks for, and get ready for the next one in a few months. So that's the agenda for today. We hope y'all can stay with us. Oh, thanks, Christy. Hope y'all can stay with us for as long as you can. A lot of good stuff happening. In terms of just one more update, and then we'll get right into the agenda. So for folks who've been with us, certainly, you've noticed that the Department of Land Conservation and Development has grown a lot. And it's possible to grow a little bit more even after this legislative session. So we are going through a lot of process development, getting ourselves kind of in a place where we are comfortable with all the growth that's happened. It's really exciting, and there's a lot of good work happening. But if you find yourselves trying to reach out to people and it feels a little disjointed, it's just because we're still trying to get our feet underneath us. So if you could give us a little bit of grace, working with your regional reps is probably the most effective way to get somebody if you're having some challenges. And even then, sometimes it's still a little challenging, but we're working our way through it, and we are going to come out at the other side of this even stronger than we have been in the past, and that's really exciting. But just ask for a little bit of grace as we figure ourselves out here over the next few months, and especially if we get some new folks, that much more. But yeah, a lot of good things happening with the agency and with just a growing partnerships, both with the agency and its agency partners, but also the coastal management program. So in spite of what I've said, we've got this great network of which you're all a part of. And then we've just been welcoming so many more partners into the conversation with us. It's been really exciting. So you'll start to see that as we move forward, and hopefully benefit from it, because that's really one of the goals of this network, is to make each of us stronger. So use us and abuse us. We are here to be a partner to you, and to be an advocate for the coast and all of the wonderful opportunities that it brings to this state. So with that, let's just have a quick break. Yay, we've got a little bit extra time that we can add into the roundtable. So we're just going to take a 10-minute break. If everybody can come back at 10:55, that'd be swell, and we'll move into the conversation about the non-point program and the roundtable. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. You can turn your cameras on when you come back. It'll be really helpful. Okay, hopefully folks are going to start jumping on. If you could just turn on your cameras or give me a thumbs up, that'd be swell. Thank you, Nora and Lori. All right, Amanda, are you with us? Let me check. Oh, Amanda is not with us at the moment. Well, I can do this if she's not available. I'll give everybody just another second to get on, and then we'll get into the rest of our agenda. All right.
Lisa,
Great.
while we're waiting, I'm curious
Listen.
about where you saw the budget leak.
Oh, the president's budget leak?
Mhm.
It hit the airwaves. Yeah,
Mhm.
we got it. We got it on CSO forwarded it, but it was everywhere. It was on Facebook, and you want me to send it to you?
Yeah, could you please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Well, okay. I'm gonna get started because I want to respect everybody's time here. And again, make sure we've got as much time as we can for the roundtable. So, in a nutshell, and I'll make sure Amanda doesn't pop on here while I'm doing this, but in a nutshell, the in 2015, as I alluded to, our coastal non-point pollution control program was disapproved by EPA, which resulted in a 30% reduction of the coastal management program's annual award. That was the consequence through CESARA, which was done, and I always forget, it's a fairly new um, statute, but it's the Coastal Zone Act Reauthorization Amendments. And in that act, it required that states and territories with approved coastal zone management programs have approved coastal non-point pollution control programs. So ours was disapproved. We had the penalty of a 30% reduction. And then we kind of waited. The predominant challenge points were around activities associated with forestry practices. And it wasn't until the 2020s that the Private Forest Accord was convened by Governor Brown, sorry, and ultimately came up with a path forward, which resulted in a number of significant rule changes by the Board of Forestry that addressed almost all of the challenges that we were having with the Coastal Non-Point Pollution Control Program. We had a few others that we've been working through as well. But that was definitely the focal point for EPA around forestry practices. In addition, when those rules were adopted, they had a provision in there that if a habitat conservation plan was not approved, which the Department of Forestry has been working on with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA. If it was not approved by 2027, then the rules would sunset, the newly adopted rules would sunset and revert back to the prior rules. So we've been working, DEQ has been leading this effort, and we've been working with them and the Department of Forestry to have a number of different approaches to addressing forestry activities that would be satisfactory to EPA and NOAA, and we believe that we have landed on that. And we've been working lockstep with NOAA and EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, so that we've been getting pieces approved reviewed in advance to kind of call out any possible challenges to the approaches that we're taking. And it's been a really collaborative affair. And we hope to be able to submit all the final pieces to EPA. We'd hope to do it by the end of April, but with the hacking that took place at DEQ, that pushed the timeline back a little bit, because that was quite a event, and it took some time for DEQ to get everything in place so that they could continue to move forward. But in the next couple of weeks, anticipate that moving into and off of our plate and into EPA and NOAA's hands, where they will begin their official process, which could take up to 3 years to get through, but we really believe we're on a good path forward, which is exciting. And if it gets approved, when it gets approved, then we will have, we'll recover that 30% loss, which will be significant and very impactful, I think, on the program and on the network itself. So it's been a long slog, and we are working our way through it, and we see an end in sight, at least on the part we can do. And once we hand it off, at that point, we'll just be responding to questions. And at some point in 6 to 9 months, we would expect to see EPA release it for public comment, and at which point the whole package will be available for folks to review the parts that are in question and provide comments on if inclined. And so I think we've done a really good job of trying to think of all the possible questions that are out there and how to address them, and how to ensure that Oregon has a really strong coastal non-point pollution control program. And I will tell you that when we work our way through this, we will have the strongest coastal non-point pollution control program in all of the coastal states. So that's also something to be really proud of as well. So that's kind of the update on that. It's just something we've brought up over time because it's been a thing, and wanted to let you know that it's actually coming to an end of a phase and moving into a second, and that it's pretty exciting. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, you can always pop something in chat too if you don't want to ask the group. But with that, we're going to move into the local government roundtable. So for those of you that are new, if we were sitting in a big room, it'd be a little more conversational. So certainly we lose a little bit of that, but also allows people opportunity to be a little more focused, I suppose. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go down and go down the list. We're start from, I can't remember where I did last year. So this year I'm just going to pick. We're going to start from top to bottom. And I'll work our ways down that way. And if you have more than one person representing your jurisdiction, if one person could speak for everybody, I certainly don't have a problem with someone chiming in to make sure that something's accurate or whatever. But let's try to condense it down a little bit. We're going to open it up to questions when people are done. Because again, this is a great opportunity to learn from each other. Feel free to use the chat liberally to ask your questions as well, because it's also a place where we can capture that in writing. So we've got a couple different means of getting at, asking someone for a little more detail on something they might be chatting with us about. So let's see here. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can do this in the right way here. I need a pen to help me track. But we'll start with Gail at Clatsop County. If you could turn on your cameras when you talk, if you can, that would be great. And I think we can get off the agenda, Mandy, for a little bit, and just so people who are on camera can feel like you're talking to the group. So Gail, if you want to kick off the roundtable, that'd be swell. Or are you still here, Gail? Oh, I guess I should have checked that. Oh, Gail stepped away. Oh dear. All right. Well, let's see. Then who do we have from us? Story? Do we have? I should have said. Let's see it. Amanda. Yep. Sorry for you being new too, but you feel comfortable kicking it off, Amanda? Oh, she might have stepped away as well. Ah, the beauty of these meetings. Let's see. So if there's no one else from there, and I don't think we heard anybody from, do we have anyone from Warrenton? Jeff? Was Jeff here?
We don't have Jeffrey
Okay.
from Warrenton.
Oh, okay.
Is Garrett still on for
Garrett had to step off. He'll be back.
Okay, to Gerhardt, and then Jeff Flory from Seaside would be next.
Yeah, I'm still here. So you looking just for an update on what we've got going on in Seaside right now?
Sure, any issues you want to share with the group, and if there's questions you have that you think you could get some good feedback from, use this as a platform as well.
I think my issues are pretty much similar across the board. A lack of staffing to just keep up with everything that we need to do, especially keeping up with trying to get codes updated. Right now, we are still pushing through with our comprehensive plan. Actually have a meeting on that tonight. Hopefully looking at adoption early fall is kind of our timeline. Along with that, trying to get some housing code updates completed, some development code updates started. It just seems to be a never-ending list of trying to get everything put in line and organized.
Yeah. How, where are you in your staffing complement?
I have 50% of my staff out on leave until the middle end of June. They've been out for a couple months already, so it just really makes it difficult to try to keep all the development going. If you haven't seen Seaside, we've got several good housing projects in the pipeline right now in various stages. Lots of apartments being built. Housing on the coast has always been an issue, and we've finally gotten some traction in building some housing here, a couple hundred units in the pipeline right now.
Great.
But just trying to keep all of that going as a one-man show has been pretty challenging.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I suspect we'll hear a little bit of that all the way up and down the coast.
I imagine that's a common problem that we all probably share.
Yeah, for sure. Brett, you want to take the rest of the coast, North Coast?
Okay, I think Robert from Cannon Beach may be next.
Yeah.
Hello, we don't have a whole lot going on. We've got an ongoing code revision process. We've been working on this for some time. It's been a somewhat piecemeal thing. We recently adopted a wetland overlay revision. We're going through the remainder of our code doing that. We have been replacing some municipal buildings around town. We're currently in a temporary building and getting rid of our old, nasty, disgusting, mold-infested city hall. So anybody who is familiar with Cannon Beach's facility, it is no longer present. But that's pretty much all we've got going on up here right now.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back. I see Jeffrey Adams from Warrenton got on. Jeffrey, do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Great.
Okay, maybe Jeffrey had to step away. I'm gonna go back to Amanda. Amanda Hunton, or excuse me, Amanda Perrin from Astoria. Are you on?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay. Do you want to tell us what's going on in Astoria?
I mean, we've got a lot of big construction projects happening. We have we have permanent supportive housing going in. We have an expansion of our maritime museum, an expansion of the hospital, a new clinic, and affordable some housing for particular population. And yeah, and so we have tons of big things happening right now. And we're in the thick of it with all of it.
Okay, and yeah, I can, for someone who lives in Astoria, I can say definitely, you know, you're in the thick of it with the amount of construction that seems to be going on in town. I'm going to go back to Jeffrey Adams. Jeffrey, are you able to get on and introduce yourself to everyone? Okay, I'm going to just introduce Jeffrey. Jeffrey is the brand new planning director in Warrenton. He started last week, and so glad to have him on board up in Warrenton. So I'm now going to move down to Tillamook County. I don't believe we have anyone from Manzanita, but Lori Longfellow from Nehalem, do you want to tell us what's going on in your community?
Oh, Lori is having some technical difficulties. So maybe Lori, if you just want to write some stuff in the chat, that would be helpful. Yeah, she's been struggling with her camera and microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Let's keep on going. Don't have anyone from Wheeler, and then Garibaldi. I don't see Scott on for that, but then maybe Bay City. David, do you want to go next?
All right. So Bay City, what events we have? We just had the mayor's State of the City event, and that's basically an event where departments in the city, groups in the city and town showcase all their activities and goals and new items that have gone on. You know, these are items that we showcased in the city planning department. What's new in Bay City shows the codes and all the development requirements and the new FEMA requirements and all that fun stuff. And lastly, we're talking about Senate Bill 406 requirements, and Megan probably can also tell you a little bit about all the requirements that we have to meet for middle housing for our smaller communities. And we are on the final stretches of that. We're going to take it before council in May with their final hearing in June. So then we'll be adopting all those new requirements. We are also pursuing a one-time UGB expansion of 15 net acres, and the council has approved the site selected on the very south side of town between Alderbrook and Vaughan. We have a new an area where TEP, Tillamook Estuary Partnership, will be relocating in the near future, just outside the Kilchis Point trails. And we have a subdivision application for Misty Brook, which is a 43 acre or 43 unit proposal on about 30 acres of property. We're also dealing with McRae, the old handle factory, and their reuse of their property for mixed uses. And so we're changing the zoning a little bit there as part of all the code changes that are going on with Senate Bill 406. And lastly, if you ever drive by on 101, instead of just a vacant parking lot before City Hall, where there's now a mural, you will see a welcome garden, which is a very beautiful thing done by our booster club. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, David. Yeah, I'll just quickly add on for all the other coastal jurisdictions. If you ask, what is Senate Bill 406? This is only applicable to jurisdictions in Tillamook County, where all the communities in Tillamook County, regardless of their size, are planning for housing at the middle-sized city range. And so every community is working through right now updating their code. So it's quite a few post-acknowledgement plan amendments coming out of Tillamook County right now because of this Senate Bill 406 implementation. Megan from City of Tillamook, do you want to go next?
Sure, good morning. So we've got Public Service Week next week. And so we have an event called Touch a Truck, where we have the community bring in all their trucks, emergency vehicles, different things like that. It's a good outreach for us for flood development and insurance requirements for the community. So we use that as part of our credits for our CRS program, which we recently passed. We're still at a level 9. We didn't increase this year, so we maintained our level 9 status, which was exciting because that was our big 5-year one. So it was good to get through that. We also have our middle housing code updates. We're taking that before Planning Commission tomorrow for our public hearing tomorrow evening, and then back-to-back city council meeting on Monday night to hopefully have our first reading for adoption. And then our interim city manager is leaving May 15th is his last day, and we have under contract a new city manager. We're just filing up those steps, and he should be coming on board hopefully in May. So that's exciting. And that's pretty much all we have going, except for just small remodels and things like that. No big developments yet to speak of.
Okay, thanks, Megan. So I don't, let's see, there's Melissa. Melissa from Tillamook County. Do you want to give an update?
I would love to. Thanks, Brett. Again, Melissa Yates, Senior Planner for Tillamook County. Very similar updates to my counterparts, mainly working through the middle housing program right now to get SB 406 going. We plan to have our hearings beginning in June to get through those updates. I will say what's been really great about this middle housing process for us, especially, is we have numerous Citizens Advisory Committee, CACs, in our jurisdiction. And what's I'm grateful for is we've always had some CACs that were incredibly active in our communities, but what's been really nice about this middle housing process is it's kind of renewed a lot of interest for some of our CACs that haven't been as active in the future or didn't really have one other than the original plans that we adopted in the 90s for those communities. So it's reinvigorated the process for a lot of those communities to kind of step up and create some envisioning for the future of their programs that they want to see and community plans. So again, June will be when we get to those hearings for those. Director Absher is the one that's taking the lead for that and getting all of the community plans updated and the community zoning ordinances through those updates as well. Couple other big projects that we're kind of seeing. We've been working in the last couple of years with mainly Verizon to get cell phone towers on Highway 6, which is one of our highways that has basically absolutely no cell service or communication opportunities. And so we're kind of getting closer and closer to the home stretch. We got through all the land use reviews for those last year, a couple remaining variances to get through. But we're already seeing some of the building permits coming through for those communication facilities. So we're hoping will improve not just personal communications, but especially for our emergency service responders of Highway 6, because that is a dead zone for us. And it's a very dangerous highway system. So we're really happy to see those improvements coming through. We also, in Tillamook County, we contract with the city of Nehalem for work within some of their city limits, but as well as the urban growth boundary. And I know Lori wasn't able to make her audio video work, but I just wanted to tout, we're assisting them with a plan development that's going in the urban growth boundary of Nehalem for Sammy's Place, which is a community that kind of helps all abilities and disabilities within their community, and they're looking to do a plan development. So we're looking at anywhere, I think it was like from 6 to 10 units in their community on like a 3-acre piece of property. And this has been a goal of Sammy's Place for quite a while. It was their intent with purchasing the property, but we're finally getting through the land use review process for that one. So super excited for that project. And then otherwise, we're already seeing our tick up. Our building division does all of the construction reviews for all of Tillamook County. And so we're seeing a high increase. The summer is here for us. So those workloads have increased greatly for us. We're also not low on staffing, where we're as close to as staffed as we probably ever have been or gonna get. But we're working on getting a new building official, as well as a couple permit techs to fill in for positions that we've moved around throughout the department. So hoping to see a bunch of those onboarding here in May and June, so that maybe we have a super successful summer season for us. But otherwise, that's it for Tillamook County.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. And I'm going to ping back up to Clatsop County. I see that Jason Pollock from Clatsop County is online. I haven't seen Gail on, but Jason, do you want to give kind of an update on all the things that's going on up at Clatsop County? I put Jason on the spot, and he must have stepped away. So, okay. Well, then in that case, I'm going to move down to Lincoln County and start with the jurisdictions. So I don't see anyone from Lincoln City. But then we have Creed. Eckert, Creed, you want to introduce yourself again and say what's going on in Depot Bay?
Sure, thanks. Creed Eckert, again, recently hired as city planner in Depot Bay. I've been there just about 2 months, so I can't give you too much background information on the community, but I can tell you that some of the things that are keeping City Hall pretty busy are managing the harbor. They just had new docks installed, 5 of the 6, I think, replaced. They were quite dilapidated, and so getting the harbor slips repopulated and getting all the sea captains happy, and responding to a constant demand for tourist accommodations. Everyone in town wants to rent their home as a transient short-term rental for tourists, and that's allowed in town in a number of locations, although not in our residential zones. There's a long list of code amendments that are needed, drastically needed, and the mapping needs to be brought in the 21st century to help me do my job and help people understand where natural resources are, where hazard areas are, and frankly, even where zoning boundaries lie. So we're hoping, we need comprehensive plan amendment too, but the code amendments are a higher priority, and we'll hope to be making some headway on that, including seeking some funding opportunities. And of course, there is a 5-phase residential development on the north end of town that approved some 5 or 6 years ago, Hills of Depot Bay, on 40 acres, ultimately, I think 400 units. It's currently in the final approval stage for phase 2 PD development approval. And I guess that's about all I've got to share on that right now.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks. I appreciate it. Agreed.
You bet.
And I'm going to move on to City of Newport. Derek, do you want to speak for the city?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Derek Tukos, Newport Community Development Director. There are a number of projects we've got moving right now. Hatfield, it has 77 units of student housing under construction as we speak down the south part of town. We have the Oregon Coast Aquarium is continuing to expand its scope of services. They've got a wildlife rehab center that's also under construction right now. We have a range of various smaller housing projects going on. Our office has been heavily engaged in planning work around our city center area, US 20-101, and are wrapping up that. It's a TGM funded project, where at least half of it's TGM funded, where we're kind of reworking how the transportation system is going to work through along 101, and kind of re-envisioning what we can do in terms of design standards in that area and streetscape improvements to facilitate the more mixed-use housing and get additional housing options into some of our commercial core areas. So we expect that we'll we've wrapped up the public engagement piece, have a final draft of that plan that's being pulled together, and envision that that's going to go through public hearings processes, likely late summer, early fall. And then next year, what we'll be doing is probably advancing a 30% design on the key transportation solution along 101, which would be a short couplet. And then so that we have a better sense of exactly what our right-of-way needs are and exactly what the alignment's going to look like. But we've also advanced some urban renewal dollars to frame out a business facade improvement program. We do have a number of property owners there that would like to reinvest in their properties, or they need assistance abating asbestos or shoring up the structural elements. And that's what this program is going to be framed about. So we're spending a fair amount of time on that. We are now entering our second season on the Bayfront with paid parking, which we implemented. And so that's been fairly successful in getting folks to change their parking behavior. And it's also been successful in getting better vehicle turnover. And it's generating sufficient revenue for us to support our parking enforcement, and are also, giving us a few $100,000 extra that we can apply to improving parking areas, sidewalks, supporting tourist-oriented transit like a trolley or something of that nature. So those discussions are picking up now that we actually have a dedicated funding stream down there. For those that might be curious, we in the first 6 months of that program, from May to October, we had 110,000 transactions on the Bayfront. We pegged that, priced that at $1 an hour for 4 hours. We ran it 7 days a week, 11 to 7, from May to October, and then we ran it on the weekends only from November to April. What that amounted to in terms of revenue between the meters, the electronic permits, and parking tickets was about $420,000 just on the Bayfront. So, it's taking us from a position where we had no revenue to support, the maintenance of a large number of public parking lots that we dedicate to these highly congested areas, to a point now where we actually have a revenue stream, and we have some hope of maintaining and even improving those key assets. We have a community college, Oregon Coast Community College, had a bond measure that passed, and so they are now embarking on design of a kind of a trades focused expansion to the community college. And so they have design professionals now that they have on board, and we actually have a pre-development meeting coming up with them in about a week. And on the housing front, in 2017, we put in place an affordable housing excise tax, and we reduced our system development charges somewhat, so we had room to put that in without increasing upfront development costs. We're now in a position where we're able to kind of start to dole out some of those funds. Our council has agreed to pay system development charges for a Northwest Coastal Housing Project. That will be a 32 units affordable housing, senior housing project up in Agate Beach. And so we look forward to the building plans coming in on that. I know they're working hard on that project. And we also have a program now in place where for market rate, multifamily 20+ units, will pay their building permitting fees out of that fund, which, for say a typical multifamily we have here, some of the newer projects, each building will have somewhere between 8 and 12 units. That amounts to about $25,000 per building if you're trying to kind of quantify that in cost savings for the developer. It's helpful. I mean, it's still a challenge. We've got a number of projects, multifamily projects, 3 of them I can think of right now offhand, where the developers would like to move forward, but the current economic conditions are such that they're just hesitant to commit at this time. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on. One thing, we are actually initiating a targeted amendment to our geologic hazards code. We've been getting more and more interest from geotechnical engineers to be able to prepare geologic reports. And it's this interplay between certified engineering geologists and what they can do, and geotechnical engineers and what they can do. And we may expand the scope to allow geotechnical engineers to play a more active role in preparing geologic reports. Generally, they appear to be qualified to do that. And we're having a lot of folks who are trying to do development in geologic hazards areas. They're having a hard time lining up firms with certified engineering geologists right now. So it's something I'll walk through carefully. We're going to do some outreach with the LCD and DOGAMI, along with the Oregon State Board of Geologists and the licensing board for the engineers as well, and a number of the different firms who do work out here, and see where we land on that one. So that's what I've got.
Okay, thanks, Derek. So Lincoln County, Megan or Lindsay, which one of you is going to give a Lincoln County update?
I can. Thanks, Brett. So Lincoln County is also struggling just with our current and our past workload. We still have an extensive backlogs of land use permits, and we have not experienced a slowdown in building or septic permits in the last 4 years at all. It's been pretty overwhelming, and even the lull in the winter time is really not a lull anymore, at least for us. We're also expecting 3 goal exception applications this year. 1 has already been submitted. Central Lincoln PUD is looking to cite a substation in TC zoning, and our code doesn't have mixed farm forest uses that would allow that. So they're seeking a goal 4 exception. We are also expecting a goal exception from ODOT for Highway 101 along the Moolock Beach section of highway. Their proposal's unclear, but we expect it to be around a 2-mile exception area based on preliminary conversations with them. So we'll see how that pans out at a public hearing. The other goal exception we're anticipating getting, I don't know how quickly or not, but there's been preliminary conversations with Glen Eden Sanitary District looking to cite a new wastewater treatment facility in TC zoned land. So that would be another goal 4 exception, and that is a humongous undertaking. I don't know timelines for that project, but they are doing some preliminary scoping and assessment of areas that make sense to them to cite the sanitary district wastewater treatment plant. What else? We in December 2024 we adopted a new flood hazard overlay zone to comply with FEMA's December 1st mandate to integrate the ESA standards, no net loss standards, into our floodplain development code section. Those went into effect in mid-December for Lincoln County, so we have been applying the new FEMA standards. We have to update and go through that process again because FEMA had changed a few things that make a difference for analyzing applications with some of the standards, and they rolled that out too late when we had already had our public hearing scheduled and the materials disseminated. So we'll have to do another update of our flood hazard management ordinance to get the latest language from FEMA's model ordinance that they laid out for us. What else? We are also working through updating our estuary management plan. That was supposed to be done last year, but the FEMA stuff kind of caused us to do a hard pivot. So that got put to the wayside. And so hopefully we can pick that up this year. And we will be looking at updating not only the work that has been completed for Yaquina, but the other estuaries, and doing one update in its entirety for the unincorporated part of Lincoln County. Lindsay, am I missing anything? We've scanned all of our septic records. So those have all been in paper format for the last 50 years. So I think that project is nearing completion. So they're all going to be digital and available online. And that should hopefully help with a lot of research requests for septic records that our planning and on-site and building division staff have to fulfill. We're also doing scanning of our land use records. So hopefully those one day will be all digitally available, but that will probably be a year to process to index them, scan them, index them, and then have them in a format available for public consumption. And we're also having to undergo an update with our building permit intake process. So yeah, I think I see Ano. Do you have anything to add?
Right. No, great update, and thank you.
Okay. So Lisa or Wade, you want to take on? This is the break between the North Coast and the South Coast jurisdictions.
Yep. I think I'll pass it on to Hui now, starting with Yachats.
Walport. Yeah. Yeah.
I corrected myself.
Thanks, Lisa. Jaime, would you please?
Absolutely. So Jaime with the city of Walport. So after years of being a very sleepy, quiet community, we've been all over the newspapers and all over Facebook, if you guys have been paying attention. So things are a little distracting down here. And that's all I can say about that. But business as usual, fair number of building permits, not a lot of big land use stuff, just plugging away on some existing capital improvement projects. The public works guys have been really busy working on the water plants and the wastewater plants. We're waiting for the weather to help us a little bit more so we can finish up the huge playground that we've got right here next to City Hall. And hopefully that'll be opening up here to the public very, very soon. And then we're looking for grants to try to help us with the community center and some other road projects and that kind of stuff. Other than that, again, capital improvement projects, some sidewalk projects, and again, the playground is our big focus. And that's about all I've got.
Thank you, Jaime. There's no one from Yachats, so I would just pick a couple things about what's going on in Yachats. They've been working on trying to fix parking in the downtown area, the businesses. I'm sure it's common in the coastal town. They have, I believe, in possession a trolley from the Oregon Coast Visitor Association to try to partner with Inter Job Corps, which is in Lincoln County jurisdiction north of town. They have a huge amount of paved area for parking. So hopefully people can park there, take trolley there, and then take it to town. So they're working on that. Another thing they're working on is code work for housing to try to audit their code and make it more streamlined and more conducive to make housing happen. So that's Yachats. And so going south would be Lane County. Nori, would you be able to say something about? Thank you.
Yeah, so we haven't had any big development applications over on the coast that I'm aware of that have come through. We recently adopted into our rural residential code, the RV allowances for properties that have a dwelling in RR zones to also place an RV as a dwelling. As a rental. We've had the normal uptick in development applications, but those are mainly inland. I did a note recently. We've had a couple of years ago, we adopted into our floodplain code a moratorium on new development in the floodway. And we recently had 2 challenges to that we're still kind of looking at for constitutional takings. And I'm working with Deanna Wright there at DLCD on kind of navigating that issue. But those are the exciting things happening that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Nore. I see that Jacob has jumped off from City of Florence, but Hannah is still on. Hannah, would you be comfortable? I know you're new, but would you be able to provide an update?
Yeah, I can say a few things. We are currently kind of in the kickoff stages of a mobility hub plan. We received a grant through the Lane Transit District to kind of figure out a better spot for all of our various transit services to come together. So we've got Link Lane coming from Eugene and going up to Yachats, and then we've got another service that comes from Coos Bay, as well as the Rhodey Express. And so we are kind of starting, I think the funding will begin in the new fiscal year. So we're starting to get ready to launch that, which we're excited about. Let's see, we've got just a whole lot of applications coming in, a lot of short-term planning happening. I know we're also working on updates to our floodplain management code, as well as our housing code. So those are in progress. I think if there's anything else big. I think that's kind of the big stuff. But yeah, we've just got a whole lot coming in between all of those big things. So it's a lot of fun.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yep.
So then the next would be Reedsport. Steve, are you still there, please?
I am still here, haven't run away yet. The biggest thing that we have going on, and of course, we're seeing the kind of the reduction, also our slowing down of actual development, except for little remodels. Our big project right now is the award of $4 million from FEMA. We actually got the award from FEMA. So the city's levee reconstruction, the final design is underway. So we anticipate that project moving forward here very, very soon. We've had a lot of, small prospecting, including things like, conversions of a motel to apartment housing. We've seen quite a bit of reinvestment into revitalization. Part of that stirred from our URA dollars that we've been putting into the community to take a lot of buildings that have been old industrial and converting them over to residential over in our downtown area. We are also looking at the usage of our marine industrial land for potential redevelopment. We have interest, from the commercial community to review what we need versus what we have. And we completed our update to our Section 10 development code. But of course, as fast as we complete it, we're looking at new language to add to our development code. We've got a lot of issues in town because, we're a small, slow growth community, but we need to get some language to control how people are utilizing their downtown commercial. If it has storage units, kind of looks bad from the city street. Then this fall, we'll be working on a TSP with ODOT, getting that updated and moving forward with the railroad cargo, related project. It's under design as well. Sound fair?
Great. Thanks, Steve.
Awesome, thanks.
The resource in Douglas County, and I don't believe Douglas County is on. I would just say one thing about what's going on in coastal Douglas County is on Seminole Harbor, which is the Winchester Bay, unincorporated Douglas County. It's a department of the county, and they have a master plan now to try to redevelop the marina and all the property to be like a more resort and not commercial. You're trying to get it more businesses going on, and then it looks better and all that kind of stuff. And right now the master plan has a hotel sited in the marine industrial zone. So we will be working with the county to see what's going to happen with that. Okay, so moving on down south, Coos County. I see Jill is on like 5 times, but I don't think she actually introduced herself earlier this morning, so I don't know if she's actually on. Jill, is anyone from Coos County around the computer, the 5 computers?
Hi, this is Amy. Jill isn't on. We are all logged in as Jill. There's 5 of her.
Amy, would you be able to provide an update?
What type of update are you looking for? We just, Coos County assumed the DEQ program. Well, Coos Health and Wellness did. And so community development is helping the intake of that. So that's been kind of interesting. I think that's pretty much all the new. We're still just chugging along.
Okay.
I have a report on Myrtle Point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Crystal?
Yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
This is Crystal Shoji, and I'm working with the city of Myrtle Point on a plan amendment of PAPA. And they don't have very many of these, so it's pretty exciting. We have a property that's in heavy industrial. They have 2 heavy industrial sites in Myrtle Point, and we had a client come in. They own the property, and so they have a consultant, and she wrote up a plan to get a zone change. She was hoping to change it to commercial because they wanted to have an RV park, and we didn't think that was good to get rid of the industrial land, really the only industrial land that's open, because the other one has city stuff already filling it. And so we asked her to maybe redo it and change the use so that the industrial zone could include the RV park. And she did that, and she's done a really great job. And we're taking care of all the notices, and we're doing a text amendment. And I think it's going to be great because Myrtle Point has wanted an RV park to go along with their fairgrounds for years, and it's in a lot of plans and things like that. And so we have a proposal then to include a lot of the fairgrounds things, outdoor recreation things in the industrial zone. And we'll be taking that to the Planning Commission later this month, and then to the it'll go to the council after that. So it'll be a nice change. They haven't had a change in any zone except the floodplain back in 2018. it'll be nice if they can actually get some development there. And then I do have another report later for Port Orford whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Crystal. And one thing I'll add for Coos County before we move on is that Coos County is also working on, along with City of Coos Bay and City of North Bend, the estuary management plan update, which is in its early phases. I just want to mention that. I see that Ralph is on from North Bend. Ralph, are you around?
I am.
Go ahead.
I'm not the planner, I'm the city engineer, so we are working on a land bank, should complete that at the end of the month, hopefully, because our city planner is leaving to go to Jefferson County. So that's one of his tasks to complete, get the land bank process in place. I can tell you all kinds of construction. We just completed a middle housing subdivision plat, which is a new process for us and a lot of people. And we'll be starting construction on the actual development of that. There's a 105 unit apartment complex being built in North Bend. It's supposed to break ground next month, which is actually next week, but next month. And the only other planning issue is establishing a zone for trying to get that extra marijuana monies that they can grow or produce marijuana, trying to find a location that will allow the marijuana production, because the state cuts you back on your marijuana tax revenues if you do not have an area that they can grow or not manufacture. Do things other than sell it. We'll put it that way, other than dispensaries. So that's really what I have from the planning update. A lot of vacations, normal business, but that's about it as far as major projects.
Thank you, Ralph. And I'm gonna skip a little bit because I have to call my kids' school back. They just called me. So Dana, would you mind providing an update from Bandon? And then I'll be right back.
Sure, happy to. I think the biggest update for us is that Mickey and I have both put in our notice, which is why Shannon is here. She's our newest planning assistant. So Mickey's done at the end of May and I'm done mid-June. And so we're just trying to do a lot of wrapping up and leaving things for the next person. One of those things is we're doing a number of code updates, like many other people expressed. Our code is super out of date. It makes it really challenging for us to do our job sometimes. So one of the interesting things that's come up, this is the second time this has happened, but we had a number of mapping errors. It seems like in the 90s where properties were apparently rezoned on our zoning map, but never legally rezoned. So we're trying to figure out the sort of history and timeline of zoning ordinance updates to prove what the zoning is on a certain piece of property. And what it's uncovered is there's probably more than just the couple that we found. So that's going to be, I think, a push for the next people in this office. We're also updating the FEMA code to come into compliance by June 30th, and same with the Senate Bill 1062 duplex requirements. We're working on those. And then finally, we're also adopting a master plan development chapter. We have a number of large pieces of property in our city that our zoning's really basic. And so in order to get some cool workforce housing projects or other projects that might have a public benefit, we're proposing this master plan development chapter that would allow folks to, as long as the zoning is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, come up with some more unique land use regulations. And those will go to our city council. They're all going in June. We're also working through a multi-year process of updating our transportation system plan that's hopefully going to be completed and adopted by September. Our biggest challenge has been what to do with Highway 101. There is now like a No on Bandon Road Diet 2.0 Facebook page where people are very against what what we essentially have to do because of ODOT standards. We're also working on a parks master plan to be able to set ourselves up to have a parks SDC to cover those costs. And we're working through the housing code audit and then housing code update thanks to the funding from DLCD. On the housing front, we also are partnering with our school district. The city and the school district own a significant amount of land across the street from our school. And so we're working with a developer to create a workforce housing, sort of subdivision that has small cottages that are attached, and then townhouses, apartment building, and single family dwellings that would all be for sale units for people working within Bandon. And the land cost is taken out of the housing cost. So trying to keep it more reasonable for folks. We also have quite a bit of development happening. We've got multiple subdivisions that we're working through. And then we learned that Bandon Beach Hotel, which was approved quite a few years ago, is finally starting to break ground this year. And then Gravel Point, which is a huge for Bandon Resort, 110 room hotel and 32 villas and suites and a number of restaurants. They are also intending to break ground this summer, so we've been working with them on infrastructure plans. We're newly eligible for Community Development Block Grant, which is maybe not so great thing because it means we have more low and moderate income people, but it does help us qualify for some significant funding to upgrade our public infrastructure and community facilities. And then the other thing, I'd like to say thanks so much to Rhiannon and Laurel, who have been really helpful in having us update our beaches and dunes overlay. One of the issues we have gorse as our nasty invasive species here that we are working diligently to eradicate with inside city limits. And we've run into a lot of issues on the ocean shore. And I just want to give a shout out to them who have been really helpful, both in providing funding so we can do this work and then working cooperatively to come up with a process that works for both of us for removing invasive species in a kind of tricky permitting area. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, so see, Lisa, so 3 minutes until before break. Do you want to break now, or do you want to start another jurisdiction?
Why don't we just keep? How many do we have left? Wait, 1, 2.
See, Crystal has for Porter, and then Anthony for Gold Beach.
Is that it?
See, I believe so. Now I was gonna put my update for Coos Bay.
Okay. Why don't we just take care of it if everybody's okay, and then we can break for lunch, and then our day is actually going to end that much sooner. So if we can get through those folks, I want to make sure everybody hears them, and then we can move on. Okay.
Okay. All right. Then I'll just say the things for Coos Bay first. A few things going on Coos Bay, or a couple things with DLCD is Coos Bay has a TA technical assistance grant from DLCD to use the original problem solving process to expand their UGB to include a couple existing urban unincorporated communities to take them to UGB so they can have greater allowances for development in those areas. So we're doing that, and it will be a few years still until possibly the UGB will get actually moved. And the second thing that DLCD is working on with Coos Bay is through the TGM grant, it's the quick response program, where we're partnering with Bay Area Hospital. The hospital has a 16-acre surplus piece that they would like to develop some housing on for their employees and other folks in the area who needs housing. And so we're doing a feasibility study on the site to see what is possible and what are the options. And Chelsea and Kelly, community development administrator and plan administrator for Coos Bay, can't attend right now because they're extremely short-staffed, and so they're both covering the counter right now. And then, so that's for Coos Bay. So the next would be, Crystal, would you provide update for Port Orford, please?
Okay, Port Orford has I'm a contract planner for Port Orford and Myrtle Point. And Port Orford has a housing update grant. And it's been very exciting. Port Orford likes to get really hands-on with everything, and so takes a long time. But we are nearing the public hearing for the council. They've had a couple of them, they've continued them. And I think they're going to adopt most of the stuff. They have a question about the ADUs, because right now they have a water curtailment program because they don't have enough water. And people have been building wells, and that's been approved for most of those, but they don't really want to encourage that, because who knows when if the groundwater is really there to keep doing that. Plus, it'll make it more of a problem to get everybody back onto city water, and they're just a little city with barely 1,000 people, or 1,100 or something like that. So they really need to have people on their public water if they want to have a public water system. So one of the things that's kind of there's a question now of whether the council wants to update and include ADUs, because that might include water that they don't have if they started building. I don't really think they're going to build all that fast. I think it's just an opportunity, and I don't think there's going to be any big push, but I can see their concern. And so they were considering whether they want to put it off and do it later, or whether they could adopt it and say that when the water situation comes into improvements, which they're working on, that they will be able to just adopt it. And that's kind of what I recommended. I just hate to see stuff put on hold because usually it's forever, or it just goes on for years and then somebody brings it up again. And especially in these small towns where they don't really have their own staff to cover all the planning stuff, it's just not likely to happen. And so I hope that they can do something where they have it triggered and ready to go in when the water's there. Other things that when we've been able to incorporate, I know the limited land use stuff has been there for a long time. Everybody else is using it, it seems like, but Port Orford hasn't used it. And we're pretty excited that we have that new policy where we can do a site plan review. And then if people aren't happy with it, they can appeal. And I think that that'll satisfy them. They always like their conditional uses. I think the smaller the towns, the more they like conditional uses, because it's a chance to talk with people and negotiate with them. But I think those are not necessarily highly in favor. Right now, people, specialists and planners from bigger towns and things don't want conditional uses. They want things that are a sure thing. And so we have to kind of readjust our thinking. And I think the limited land use decision policies will be good. So that also led us to site plan reviews. We always did them for the building permits and things like that, of course, but we never really had them incorporated into the planning. And I think this will be a great improvement because there's criteria that's in the code. It's not quite as parceled out as it probably would be good to do in the long run, but at least there's a system in there and the planners can review it and the city staff, or if people aren't happy with it, then it'll go through the limited land use decision and somebody can appeal it, and people can know more about what's happening by using that process if they want. So we did a lot of updates on definitions and things. As you know, when you don't update your plan for 8 or 10 years, especially with all the legislature's been doing, there's a lot of things that need to be incorporated. So it's been a good process and we're glad we got the money to do it. And I hope it's not the end of coastal money coming for these communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Anthony, are you still around the computer to provide update for Gold Beach?
I am. I'll go fast so that everybody can get out and go to lunch. So a couple new things we have going on. Marathon's putting a new gas station in down at the port. Thankfully, they put their application in before the new FEMA regulations hit, so we don't have to follow that stuff. ODOT's working on transportation plan and study with Kittleson Associates and Consor through Gold Beach. They're gonna try and get us to go to the road diet also. I'll fight them tooth and nail on that until the very end. We do have a new city administrator. They start tomorrow. We've got an affordable housing project with the North Bend City Coos Curry Housing Authority that is going underway now on 16 units. It'll be a remodel of an old commercial building and then an additional 4 units they'll put in behind. Another extended stay motel hotel I talked to Hui about yesterday. That's going in. It'll be 16 units. We're getting a new food court, so that'll be cool, like a food truck food court. Working on an annexation for a parcel that'll bring 20 new cabins, riverfront cabins into city limits. So Hui will be up to help me on that one next week because it's a tricky annexation on portion of the properties in the UGB and a portion's not. So I'm getting a little held up on what I'm supposed to do. We did just issue permits on a new 65 unit RV park down here. So that'll be going in soon. And our veterans housing project, which is a conversion of an old motel into 18 new units for veterans housing, is about completed and opening this summer. So that's exciting too.
Thank you, Anthony. Lisa, back to you.
All right. Wow, well, first off, that's a whole lot of stuff happening on this coast. What a great summary of just some of the big issues, but also some of the great projects that are going on and the way communities are looking at housing and how we're looking across the landscape and how we want our communities to grow. Somebody had a question, so I just thought I'd ask it. It was and then we can go for lunch. Is there any chance of building a reservoir fed by rainfall? I'm not a planner, but if someone wants to jump on the chat and offer any thoughts about that, and this be more down south, so think Coos County. Port Orford. See if you have any thoughts, please feel free to share them in the chat. So we're going to come back if you're all right. We're only 7 minutes in, so we'll still come back at 1 so we can keep all our folks on task, but we are going to end early today. And so that's probably nice for everybody. So we will see you here at 1 o'clock. We're going to turn off the recording and we'll black out your screens and,
All right. Keep my screen all right?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, my screen's freezing a little bit. Give me 1 moment here.
But we can always have Mandy run it. You just let her know.
Yeah, I can run it.
Okay. Yeah, if you would be willing to, that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, let me just try one more time actually, because there's one piece that might be easier if I'm doing it. If you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, Mandy, that'd be helpful.
Everybody see that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thanks, Mandy. And the next slide will have a few animations, so I'll just let you know when to advance, if that's all right. All right, my name's Eva Krukowski. I'm the Rocky Habitat Projects Coordinator with the Oregon Coastal Management Program and DLCD. And I have been working on a project to update, to implement the newly designated Rocky habitats on the coast. There are 8 new sites that were designated, and I gave an update last time we met, sort of on the process, and so I'm here to just talk a little bit more about it. All right, next slide, please. All right, and so just to get everyone oriented to where we're talking about, I'm just going to play a short game that, if you advance to the next animation, is called Name That Agency. And so what you see here is a aerial shot of Yaquina Head in Newport, which I know many of you have been to. And in the image here, there are many agencies represented in terms of types of organisms that they have jurisdiction for, have regulations for. So you can come off mute or put in chat if you have an idea of what agency has jurisdiction over what we are talking about. So next slide, or next click, please. All right, and you can do one more. So this, oh, never mind. Wait, got a little cheat there. So in the subtidal waters, there are bull kelp that are, still connected to the ocean floor. And so the Department of State Lands has jurisdiction over subtidal waters in this region. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this arrow is pointing to an offshore rock or island. And so what agency, federal or state agency, do you think has jurisdiction over this area? You can do one more click as well, just to give some hints. There might be some offshore birds that, seabirds that live in this habitat. All right, and we won't spend too much time here. So next slide, or next click. All right, if you thought, thanks, Laurel, thanks. If you thought that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has jurisdiction over offshore rocks and islands, you are correct. All right, next click, please. This arrow is pointing to a pinniped haul-out, which is an area where marine mammals like seals or sea lions come onshore. And so what agency do you think has jurisdiction over marine mammals? And you can do one more click. All right, and next click. Good guess. ODF&W is a very good guess. There are some staff in ODF&W who work with marine mammals, but NOAA Fisheries is the federal agency that enforces the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So marine mammals as well are federally protected species. Okay, next arrow, please. This is pointing to tide pool areas. So creatures like shellfish and clams and fish found in the intertidal. What agency do you think has jurisdiction over them? We can do one more click. Got some mussels and gooseneck barnacles here. All right, Anthony got it. Yes, one more click. It is ODFW, or the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. All right, next one, please. This arrow is pointing to, or these two arrows are pointing to a beach. There's 2 beaches shown here, and any guesses on what agency has jurisdiction over the shore, on the beach shore? All right, yes, OPRD, and one more click. And then a little fun fact here. So the 2 photos on the left, we have bull kelp in the water, which is under jurisdiction of the Department of State Lands, but then marine plants that wash up on shore or that are in the intertidal, like this bull kelp shown here on shore, is actually also in the jurisdiction of OPRD, the Oregon Parks and Rec Department. Next click. And one more click. All right, moving on land here, because this is the Yaquina Head, what agency, is sort of a trick question, what agency has jurisdiction over this land, this part of the coast here, this park? All right, DSL, this is a very good guess. One more guess, I'll give you a hint. Yes, BLM. All right, we got some correct answers here. You can click the next one, please. Yeah, so the U.S. Department of the Bureau of Land Management owns this land, and the BLM owns a lot of different parcels of land around the coast and around the state, and they have jurisdiction over this park, and so they manage the visitor center here. All right, next slide or next click. This is pointing to the lighthouse, and there are two agencies that have jurisdiction in the lighthouse. One of them we just referred to, so BLM, because of the visitor center there. And one more click. It is the U.S. Coast Guard. Okay, and then last one, if you would click, this is showing a drone, kind of indicating the airspace in this area. And so any guesses what agency has jurisdiction over the airspace and planes and drones? Yes, FAA. So one more click. The Federal Aviation Administration has jurisdiction over drones, drone policy or airspace. All right, thank you for doing that. I'm developing this exercise, and Don Harris from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service came up with the idea and came up with these slides. All right, next one, please. And if you ever want to refer back to this complicated network, this graphic is in the Territorial Sea Plan Part 3. And as you can see, cities and counties do also have local land use plans and ordinances that impact the beach, particularly coastal parks and beach access. All right, next slide, please. So there are 3 types of rocky habitat designation types that on the coast that are representing this landscape that we were just talking about. So one of them is marine garden. And Yaquina Head, the photo we just saw, is also a marine garden, as well as park managed by BLM. And so the general goal of marine gardens are to protect the ecological integrity of the habitat and also promoting public outreach and education. And so marine gardens on the coast are typically places that are more accessible by foot. They typically have lots of beach areas where you can walk around and sort of safely observe tide pools. The photo here is showing Haystack Rock Awareness Program staff showing someone in a wheelchair around the habitat. And there's not a lot of places where you can actually bring a wheelchair into a tide pool. And so these marine gardens on the coast, also known as marine education areas, are places that we really want to support developing their education and outreach programs. In terms of restrictions, they are closed to the take of marine invertebrates and plants, and there are some sites that have some exceptions to that. And then I included the list here of all of the marine gardens on the coast here, so you might see some familiar places. All right, next slide, please. Marine research areas are another type of rocky habitat designation, and research areas are designated to promote long-term scientific research at the site. There are organizations like the Pete'sCo Lab and OSU that already do long-term research in in rocky habitats, and so this designation kind of supports that ongoing research and sort of limits take of certain invertebrates so that when research happens there, can get a sort of better picture of what the ecosystem is like. And I've included a list here of some of the designated areas. The new one on the coast that was designated is Cape Blanco. All right, next slide, please. And the last type of rocky habitat protected area is a marine conservation area. And this type has the most flexibility in terms of what the protection what regulations are applied to it. As you can see from some of the photos here, these are really rich ecosystems with sort of really diverse organisms, and some of the habitats are really challenging to get to. And so having a more adaptable designation is sort of helpful in those places. So marine conservation areas allow for different types of management prescriptions based on the needs. And the general overall goal is to preserve and strengthen the ecological integrity. So shown in the photo here on the top right is showing Whale Cove as well as Cape Foulweather, which are both marine conservation areas, except Whale Cove has the strictest regulations where you had basically, no take is allowed. But Cape Foulweather, on the other hand, has some much more lenient regulations in terms of what is applied there. And next slide, please. So the overall work for this project is to develop area-based site management plans for the new sites that were designated. And I've mentioned this before in the group, and so the process is moving along. And I'm hoping to share these management plans with you if you're interested in reviewing them for your city or county. And we have new sites in basically every county except for the farthest south county. And so it's a really nice way of engaging with local organizations. Like this one is showing the Shoreline Education for Awareness group, which is in Bandon, and they've been really active in developing management strategies for Coquille Point Marine Garden. And this photo is from a ribbon cutting that was last fall, where they unveiled new interpretive signage at the trailhead at the parking lot at Coquille Point. So developing an interpretive sign like that is something that could go in a site management plan. And so, why this is sort of relevant for you and, cities and counties, even though some of these places might not be in your jurisdiction, there could be opportunities to share information about events that are happening in these tide pools, or share information about tide pool etiquette, stay off the rocks, things like that. And so if you have ideas about places in town where you think would be a great place to share that information, I would really like to hear from you. And I'll give you an opportunity to review the plans if you're interested, or I'm happy to share some other resources to get the word out about these beautiful places. All right, next slide, please. So this is a timeline for if you would like to review some of the management plans. We're hoping to share the South Coast plans in June of this year, and the Central Coast plans in later June and early July, and the North Coast plans in July and August. We will host virtual workshops, which is the second series of these workshops over the summer, probably in July and August. And I would be happy to invite you to some of those public meetings where we can talk a little more in detail about each specific site. And if we're able to, we'd like to have another in-person event to sort of celebrate all of the hard work that went into this. And if you would like to review some of the final products, they will definitely be online in December. And we'll sort of have a revision process over the fall, and so I'm happy to share resources with you. And the list here down on the bottom is showing the names of the 8 new sites and sort of the different categories, coastal regions. All right, next slide, please. So I mentioned we're developing some outreach materials and education materials. Many of them will hopefully be online on the Oregon Ocean Information website. And so if you have, again, ideas about, maybe chambers of commerce, or, places billboards, or places that you think some of this sort of outreach would be really useful, that'd be really helpful to know. All right, next slide. Thank you so much. That's all I have today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Evan. All right. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Just one moment. I'm losing my screen. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we have the Goal 5 cultural areas rulemaking up next. Let's see if Amanda has joined us.
I am here, Lisa.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to hand it off to you then.
All right. Hi all. Thanks for this time today. I see there's a lot of people in the meeting, so I'm assuming some of you might not know about the initial rulemaking, so I'm going to do a quick explanation of that before I go into the fact that the rulemaking is being reopened. So the rulemaking I'm talking about is a rulemaking for Goal 5 cultural areas. We do not have a rule currently in our Division 23, which is where all rules for all other Goal 5 categories live. So we are working on developing a rule specific to cultural areas, and cultural areas in the rule that we thought we had adopted last winter, the definition, which is not going to change, includes all archaeological sites and landscape features of cultural importance. And if they are determined to be significant in a local comprehensive plan, then those would be landscape features of cultural significance. Things like features on the landscape that might have been used for wayfinding by a tribe, or is important to a story that a tribe has, or gathering spots, both people or gathering resources like berries. The rule right now is not exclusive to cultural areas, these landscape features of ones being important to tribes. But that is what we know most about at this point. So that's what the rule is trying to do. It's mostly going to be self-implementing, except that local governments will need to change some of their process steps around receiving applications, and that has to do with providing notice to tribes that have a connection to the area within that the local jurisdiction is managing. And so on that front, we will be developing guidance to help local governments with those process steps. Brett is helping me with that, along with a couple of other staff members at DLCD. And I should say that this rule, with the reopening, it won't go into effect until probably June 2026. So that we all have time. So the reopening of the rule will address 4 issues. So one has to do with the rule. Well, the rule that was adopted did not specify if an application came in to add a culturally significant landscape feature to a local inventory. The rule did not specify whether that would be through a legislative review or quasi-judicial review. And we had some very strong voices that said that that had to be legislative. We have some legal thoughts and advice that says that how an application is processed is really has to be left up to the local jurisdiction because of the subjective factors that get weighed to decide whether an application is processed legislatively or quasi-judicially. Maybe that means something to some of you, not necessarily all of you, but it's a big issue. All right, so another issue that we're going to be taking up with reopening this rule is who can apply to add a landscape feature of cultural significance to a local inventory. And right now that option is open to anybody. I mean, certainly anybody could petition a governing body of a city or a county to add a feature to the comprehensive plan. The question is, if someone walks in the door, pays the fee to have an amendment done, and that kind of makes the jurisdiction have to process that amendment or the request for that amendment, who can walk in the door and pay the fee and make that amendment. And right now it's anybody, and there's a question of whether that should be narrowed somewhat. So the third issue has to do with, we've heard, we received comments before in the other rulemaking that there should be landowner consent when a feature is added to a local inventory. And right now the rule does not require owner consent. It just requires notice to a landowner when a landscape feature is being considered to add to the local inventory. Now, before I go to the last bucket of or issue to address in reopening the rulemaking, I'll point out that everything that I just talked about had to do with the landscape feature side of cultural areas, because for archaeological sites, mostly what our rule does is point to state law and permit requirements regarding alteration of archaeology sites. So our rule creates more opportunity for conversation and for information to be shared, but in a careful, confidential manner on when a proposed development could affect a known or a suspected archaeological site, and then also make sure that more people, including landowners and developers, are aware of the laws we have, permit requirements we have. And so if there is a situation where either by unintentionally, inadvertent discovery, or intentionally, a landowner says, well, I have to put this thing here, even though there's an archaeological site, then make sure that the laws are followed and that permits are obtained to do that work. And but ideally, conversation is had ahead of time, and important archaeological sites are avoided. But that would be more voluntary on the part of the landowner and applicant or the developer. All right, so then I'm going to get to the last thing for this rulemaking, reopening the rulemaking, is that we noticed that there were some kind of inconsistencies in what the rule was requiring and then how we referred to that later on. So I'm just going to call these technical fixes. So the notice requirements are, there's a list of the kinds of amendments, local amendments that would require notice to tribes. Essentially that happens when there's time for information to come in and time for people to deliberate and maybe come up with good measures for avoiding sites. And we just have to be careful in the rule how we're talking about the process of receiving information and how that gets incorporated into the local decision. So that's what I have, and I'm happy to answer questions that people have today.
I can't find my raise hand, so this is Amy Dar. Since I haven't seen the rulemaking, can you provide some information on like what time, like review timeline is being proposed for the consultation, the tribal consultation component that you mentioned? So like the local jurisdictions have to notify the tribes, is I believe how you phrased it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of curious, since in general, a lot of these timelines for what I get are like 7 to 10 days, but oftentimes with my agency's engagement with the tribe, they typically ask for like 3 weeks to 4 weeks, just things take time because of their internal processes. So
right. Sure. So the rule, we're attempting to fit into the timelines that already exist. So the one thing that the rule does is it requires for development, for application for development activity that would include ground disturbance, then the local government would send notice to tribes, not all 9 tribes, But the ones that they'll be given a list of the tribes that have interest in that area, and that will come from the LCIS, Legislative Commission on Indian Services. And so 7 days after an application is received, notice gets sent to tribes. That is a little quicker than waiting for the application to be deemed complete and then notice being sent to tribes. So we tried to sneak some extra days in there. Then when the application is deemed complete, the tribes will be included in the list of people that get information about that application and information on where to look at the complete application. So it shouldn't add any more time to the local timeline unless there's information comes forward that there's a big concern issue and it's a very important archaeological site, let's say, and it would be time consuming and expensive for the developer to impact that. So the developer might ask for more time to rethink how what the site plan would look like. And then the developer could ask for additional time.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else for Amanda? All right. Thank you very much, Amanda. Yeah.
Let me mention that the first RAC meeting for this, the reopening of the rulemaking is May 22nd. And anybody who's interested in receiving information about RAC meetings or just information generally about this rulemaking, we can stick you on a Gov delivery list, and you will get updates as we move through this process.
Did you see the comment in the chat box, Amanda? Is this review going to LCIS?
LCIS participates on the RAC as advisory to the RAC.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Yeah, welcome.
Now, still not seeing much. I can just see it. Okay. Oh, do we have Alyssa here?
Yes, I am here.
Yay. Thank you, Alyssa. It's your turn.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Mandy, I think I have a slide. If not, I can pull it up on my end too, whichever is easiest.
Yeah, I have it. Give me just 1 second. I'll pull it up here.
No worries. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. All right, everyone. Hi, good to be here. Just by way of introduction, my name is Alyssa Benini. I'm a legislative and policy analyst here with DLCD. I focus on natural resources, rural lands, and coastal policy. My colleague Aurora Jettle, which some of you may have worked with, already, focuses more on urbanization policy. I joined DLCD at the beginning of the year, so still very much finding my feet here, but was invited to come and give just a brief legislative update for you all, seeing as we are about halfway through session. So there's a very high level timeline of session here on the screen in front of you. As I'm sure we're all aware, over 3,400 bills were introduced this session, which is some kind of a record. Thankfully, they are not all still living right now, although many still are working their way through both chambers. So you'll see that we have a few major deadlines coming up, notably May 9th, which is the second post-work session deadline, where bills that are still alive need to be scheduled at least for their work session in the second chamber in order to remain alive. And then the May 23rd second chamber work session deadline, by which time bills in the second chamber need to have been worked by their respective committees in order to remain alive, with some notable exceptions there. June 29th is constitutional sine die, so hopefully folks will accomplish what they need to accomplish in the Capitol by that time. and we can all depart into our summer vacation if we're lucky to get one. For this group, just a couple of bills that I thought you might find interesting that DLCD is tracking, with the caveat that we're not taking a position on any of these bills, but are tracking them quite closely. House Bill 3580 would create a task force appointed by DLCD focusing on conserving and enhancing eelgrass. The task force would also develop a report of findings and recommended actions for state and local governments as far as what they should do to maintain current eelgrass beds and address those in decline. And that is in the Joint Committee on Ways and Means and has not been scheduled further than that at this point. Also in Joint Ways and Means is House Bill 3587, which directs DLCD to work with community-based partners to develop management plans for sites designated in the Rocky Habitat Management Strategy, as recommended by the Ocean Policy Advisory Council, or OPAC. And this is for sites designated in the April 20th, 2023 amendment to the Territorial Sea Plan, which Eva spoke to briefly a few minutes ago. The last bill I would just note is Senate Bill 179, and this bill removes the sunset provision of Senate Bill 1576 from the 2024 session, which broadened the scope of recreational immunity and extended immunity to all improved and unimproved rights of way for folks using them to reach land for recreational purposes. So that includes paths, roads, water courses, etc. So those are the three that I flag right now. Oh, 179, excuse me, is in the House Judiciary Committee. It had its public hearing on the 24th and now needs to be scheduled for a work session. As far as process goes, but that's about all I have to report today. Happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
And Sabra.
Sorry, can you go back real quick and say what's happening with the recreational immunity bill?
Sure. Yeah, so as far as I checked all this morning, but it had its public hearing in the second chamber, so in the House Judiciary Committee on the 24th. It was scheduled for its work session yesterday in House Judiciary, but they didn't have time to hear it, so it'll need to be rescheduled.
And is this, you said it was getting rid of the sunset language, so is this making it more permanent?
It makes it permanent. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
If you happen to have a question about something else that you know is through, even if we don't know the answer right now, we could always get back to you as well. So, there are a lot of moving parts right now, and if anything's caught your attention, now's a good time to ask a question if you have one. Did you have another question, Sabra?
Nope, sorry, I'll take that.
Okay. No, that's okay. Okay. All right. Well, those are the big ones coastal program wise that that we've been following, and our folks Meg and Alyssa and others have been diving knee deep into these as they've been moving forward. So,
and I can, if it's helpful, I can go ahead and stick my email in the chat in case anything else comes up and anyone has a question. I'd be happy to help you find the answer to.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. Yes, you can go first. In fact, we'll kick it off right now, Laurel, with the agencies, just giving us some overviews of what's happening in their neck of the woods. And we'll start with OPRD.
Hi, sorry, it was not unmuting. I kept pressing the button. Again, this is Laurel with State Parks, and I just have a couple updates. A reminder from our Ocean Shore Permit team that if you have a project that is close to the beach or you have any questions about whether there's an Ocean Shore nexus, just feel free to email or call Tyler or Kevin. I'll put their contact information in the chat as a reminder. A couple updates on upcoming rulemaking. We have rulemaking coming up later this year, probably starting sometime this summer for drones in state parks and the ocean shore. Our commission just adopted new e-bike rules that will apply to state parks and our beaches. So those are probably going to go into effect here soon, shortly. There will be ocean shore rulemaking later this year, so stay tuned for permit-related rulemaking. Quick reminder that it's snowy plover nesting season, so there's some, restrictions on our beaches in certain areas. If you have any questions, I'll post a link in the chat for information about that, or feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions about plovers. We'll be posting an ocean shore permit specialist position in the next couple weeks, so stay tuned to that. I'll post a link in the chat for where it will be posted. And another thing of interest is that we are going to be doing our Curry County Master Planning public process coming up here later in 2025. So that includes the Cape Blanco and Harris Beach management units. I think those were all the things I wrote down. And I'll post the links in the chat.
Any questions? There's been a lot of stuff happening along the coast, working with particularly the regulatory side. A lot of good things happening, and a lot of challenges that we've all been working through, and appreciate OPRD always being a part of these meetings and being here and open to answering any questions. And if Laurel doesn't know the answer, she can always ask. So we're holding her hostage. If you have any questions, now's a good time. Let's see. Oh, okay. There's a question in the chat for you.
That is a really good question. Is it it's a specific area I'm thinking that you're talking about? I can put you in touch with the park manager that's in charge of that management unit if you tell me the specific beach, and then there's opportunity for outreach with the beach rangers. And I mean, it is an illegal activity, so
It's kind of our entire stretch. We've had about 26 fires already this year we've been going out every single night almost this month for having to put fires out, and we pay our firefighters each time they go there. So it's like, how do we stop this?
that sounds like a very specific issue for that management unit. So if you could let me know which beach it is, and I'm assuming you're already working with the local park manager in that area, or no?
I don't know who the park manager would be.
Oh, just tell me which beach. I can tell you. I'll put it in the chat.
Entire stretch of town.
She needs to know which town. Anthony.
Which town? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Gold Beach. I'm sorry.
Gold Beach. Okay.
I'm like,
okay.
you're just supposed to know where I'm at.
I can't remember. I'm like, there's too many. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I will put the contact information for both the beach ranger and the park manager in the chat in just 2 seconds.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Anything else? Sabra, I'm guessing your comment is to Anthony, and I believe human caused is the challenge right now. Anything else? Okay. Laurel, is that an issue that has been cropping up more and more?
It did come up in our ocean shore management team meeting last fall, and I can't remember if it was in that same area or not. I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but yeah, I mean, it's a rule to do, if you have a fire on the beach, that it's supposed to be a distance away from any vegetation or driftwood, but enforcement of that is tricky given how much beach there is and how many people there are. So
yeah, for sure.
I will put Adam's contact information here.
Yep.
Oh, that's the wrong.
All right, while she does that, anything else for Laurel? Okay. Thank you, Laurel. All right, I saw Amy come back. Anything for ODFW? Just in case you're there, Amy, you're on mute.
I am not talking right now. I'm trying to think of updates that might be relevant for this group. So
Well, that's okay. Just wanna make sure you have opportunity.
You can skip me, I think.
Okay. All right. No worries. Thank you. There is some kind of news, especially for folks in the South, but really the whole coast. If you knew Steve Rumrell, and I'm guessing more than a handful of you would have bumped into him over time, he just retired. He was a great advocate for our natural resources, and especially our work being done in our estuaries and ocean. And so his presence is going to be missed, but he's so excited to be retired that it was hard to be upset about it. So he's off going to go do some more great things, and I'm sure we'll just hear about him from the other side of the table. So, but for those of you that might not have known, he has stepped away from his position after a long time with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Do we have
I do have, on that same sort of regard, a different
Okay.
update. I'm not sure if anyone would have yet had much interaction with this person, but we did have our land resource manager leave just 2 days ago, excuse me. Basically like the second in line in the Habitat Division. John Germond had been the past person. So Janelle St. Pierre is no longer with the agency. For those who may have had any sort of groups or anything they were on with that person. And we were just told that Joy Lovett will be stepping into that role in the interim. So thanks for prodding my brain of potential things to talk about, Lisa.
You're welcome, Amy. ODFW does a lot with all of us, and sometimes I think they think that all they are is in a supporting role, but the work they do feeds a lot of what our department does, and certainly then trickles down to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, at my level, for a lot of what's been talked about today, Joy has really been kind of our point person on a lot of the legislative stuff. And, we've had some in the field requests recently for our comments on a broader scale of some different proposals. We just haven't, it was literally a few days ago. And then obviously my coverage area is only the Umpqua watershed. So we're talking many more areas of the coast than where I have knowledge of what's going on. So, and at least at the coast, we've been talking with DSL a lot, with the Elliott, which is not immediately in the coastal range, as in shores and beaches and things like that. But, we have a lot. We also have Mike Gray, also retired, our district fish biologist out of the Charleston office. And we're having to refly that announcement. So if you know any experienced other fish people from your careers that might be interested in living at the coast, that'd be helpful, sharing that around. And our wildlife, so right now we have no district fish or district wildlife biologist out of the Charleston office. And our district wildlife position, we've interviewed for it, but it's still in the air of whether that will be accepted or not for the top candidate. So, yeah.
All right. See, there was a lot going on. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Laurel, for the additional follow-up. Any questions for Amy? I don't know. Do we have any other state agency folks with us today? Yep. I was just gonna go use Sabra and then Garrett. So if you want to add something into that mix, so Sabra's with the South Slough Natural Estuarine Research Reserve.
And we sit under the Department of State Lands. But Lisa did a pretty good job of talking about what happened in the Capitol earlier in the spring. So thank you for that. So for those of you that don't know, those of you that are new, we are a network of 30, I think we're still at 30, reserves in the US Great Lakes, coastal states, and territories. So we are a national system. We're a state-federal partnership. Our state partner is Department of State Lands. Our federal partner is NOAA. So along with everyone else whose program has a lot of oversight or funding from NOAA, we're kind of all in the same boat, just waiting to see what's going to happen, having to plan for a lot of contingencies. But at least for now, it's not on fire yet, but we're starting to see the heat climb. I think is the best way I can put it. But one thing that the folks in here might see is we might have to be doing some portfolio pivots, focusing on certain types of research and having to maybe pause on others. So if you see either any new contacts coming out or anything like that, just feel free to ask. And if anything comes up and you're not getting an answer from someone, we do have a relatively new reserve manager, Patricia Fox, and she's very receptive to feedback and is still networking within the local community. So still getting to know y'all. But yeah, that's about it from South Slough.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, look, now I've lost everybody again. Ah, heaven. Yeah, thank you very much, Sabra. South Slough, was it last year already? Because it feels like it's flying by, but celebrated their 50th anniversary. They were the first National Estuarine Research Reserve in the country, which is very exciting, and you can tell the difference between the first and the last. And the Coastal Management Program was the second, and so of the coastal management programs approved in the country. So Oregon has definitely been leading the way on coastal issues for a long time. Any questions for Sabra or South Slough? I know there's certainly, you got a lot of connections in the south part of the state, but anyone up north have any questions for sure? Okay. Anything else you want to add, Sabra, before I move on to Garrett?
Nope, thanks for the space.
Awesome, thank you. Garrett with Crest.
Hey, I'm Garrett with Crest. Crest is the Columbia River Estuary Study Task Force, and we are a council of governments for both Clatsop County jurisdictions and some in Washington as well, on both sides of the Columbia River. It looks like we have like all the people we work with in Clatsop County are here in the meeting, so I'm not gonna and basically we're here to serve them, so I'm not going to give updates on their behalf, except for the city of Gearhart. And I would say we do a lot of planning work for Gearhart, but we're not focused on anything that's explicitly coastal or estuarine at the moment. I'm their consulting planner now. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. It's a non-update. Thank you.
Well, we've been keeping you busy up on the Columbia River, so. Okay, any questions for Crest? All right. Anybody I inadvertently did not catch? Or who joined us maybe a little later and didn't have a chance to speak? Okay. All right. All right. Well, now, Moses, now it's your turn.
All right, thank you. Get my slides going here. All right, can you see my slides?
Oh, nope.
No. No.
Nope.
You want me to share, Moses?
There
Oh,
it
there you
is.
go. There you go.
Good job.
Zoom just paused on me. Everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay. One sec, Zoom is getting caught up. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Michael Moses. I'm the Estuary and Resilience Coordinator at DLCD. And for the last few years, I've been leading a process that was a brainchild between myself and Heather Wade, who's formerly worked at DLCD. And we came up with this as a way to engage with some local jurisdictions to do some resilience planning and develop some relationships and identify some opportunities on the landscape to improve some of the conditions and natural hazard resilience in the estuaries and the areas and communities that surround the estuary. So wanted to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing, especially for those of you who haven't heard my spiel yet, as this process is starting to wind down to a close for at least its current iteration. So this is part of a roughly 2-year process that's funded by a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. And the goal of the process is to develop what I'm calling Estuary Resilience Action Plans, or ERAPs, for each of the counties that we've been focused on. So we previously did Tillamook and Coos counties. Now for the last bit, I've been working on Lincoln and Lane counties. And the plans are a way to try and evaluate some of the vulnerabilities to natural hazards associated with the estuaries and those communities, and to build a network of support partners, of local partners, to try and engage in some planning for actions and other activities that would ostensibly increase local resilience to those hazards. So the goals of the process, as I see them, really kind of are threefold. So the first is to take a lot of the existing work that's already been done, because there's a lot of action planning and other efforts to do vulnerability assessments and that kind of thing out there, and try and build and expand on some of that work. And in doing so, try and cultivate some relationships locally, and help maintain existing relationships as well, so that when the time comes to advance towards the next steps of implementing projects or developing policy or whatever it might be that suits the purposes of the coastal management program, it makes it that much easier to move forward. Second is to try and characterize what are some of these vulnerabilities. So trying to understand really what are the local needs, concerns, and what are the places, the assets, the resources, the populations that folks are worried about that might be at risk of natural hazard impacts. And in doing that, casting as broad a net as we can to be sure that we're including multiple perspectives, trying to reach various groups and organizations and individuals and populations to ensure that as we paint this picture of vulnerability, that it's as complete as we can make it. And thirdly, trying to identify resilience opportunities, as I mentioned. So supporting local action for resilience, trying to identify what are the projects that might already be underway. They're in the planning phase, the permitting phase, implementation phase, whatever it might be. But there might be just, the next steps might be unclear. Often we really focus on funding. So where's that money going to come from? who are the partners we're going to need to bring to the table? What are the hoops we need to jump through to advance that towards completion? So really trying to tee up the ball for those local partners and advance those projects towards completion. So, there's a number of hazards that we think about, all things probably familiar to coastal residents. And this is what we have in mind when we're trying to develop these plans. But the way that we design the process to try and address that is, one, I want it to be bottom up and community driven. So I don't want it to be, top down from the state telling local coastal partners what needs to be done. I'm trying to go out into the communities and speak with people, at least often virtually, to really hear what their concerns are and try and characterize that appropriately. And it's also led by a lot of these local partners. So while I play the role of coordinator and through via DLCD try to facilitate a lot of this, really it's, our local steering committees composed of all these different partners that help guide and the process and tell me what to focus on and where to go. And in doing that, we engage lots of interested parties. So whether that's members of the public, community leaders, organizations, what have you, municipal governments, academia, tribes, you name it, trying to get all of those players at the table and get all of their perspectives included. We're also assisted by technical expertise. So not only do we leverage the expertise within the broad Oregon Coastal Management Program network, but we also have, we have universities. So we work with U of O for Tillamook and Coos. Right now we're working with OSU and some of their skill sets and institutional knowledge has helped us along the way. I also mentioned that we leverage existing planning work, also data, information, mapping, peer-reviewed research. All of it is on the table to help us understand and characterize some of these vulnerabilities and what we can expect to be done. So then that way we aim for it to be scientifically grounded and guided as well. And so the old slide here, and still didn't update, but it's this pilot process. So we piloted it in Tillamook and Coos counties, and now we're trying to reiterate that in Lincoln and Lane counties and hopefully other jurisdictions eventually. So why estuaries? Well, the vast majority of Oregon's coastal population is situated around an estuary or near an estuary or in historic estuarine floodplain. So in an effort not to bite off more than we could chew, we decided to narrow our scope to estuaries for now. Maybe down the road, we'll expand out our resilience planning work to more than just estuaries. In this graphic here, this is from NIFWIF's crest sighting tool. It's a composite index of flood-related data sets. So basically what it means is the darker the red area, the greater the threat from flood-related hazard. Well, no surprise, it's going to be where the water is, right? So the estuaries really pop out on the landscape there. So that was just more reason to say, hey, let's focus on the estuaries to start when it comes to resilience planning and get the biggest bang for our buck. So that is where we're focusing is on the estuarine areas. But, while a lot of things like estuary management plans or other planning efforts are going to be often bounded by, where something is defined in jurisdiction, which estuaries are included in that. This process is not obligatory. There's no direct policy application. There's nothing regulatory about what I'm doing. It's all voluntary based, which means we're not as restricted in that. So I have a loose definition of estuarine areas when we go about this process and really let the local jurisdictions and local participants tell us what they're concerned about. So while I'm really focused on the estuary itself, but it also includes maybe historic floodplain that was diked and drained a century ago and hasn't been connected to the estuary, or it includes areas upriver above the tidal signal, or areas in the upland of the forest where we might have wildfire or erosion or runoff that's going to directly affect the estuary and the habitats and species or communities that depend on it. So in that way, a lot of flexibility in what we focus on. An example is in Tillamook and Coos. I've heard a lot about some of the flood issues and other hazard problems with Nescoin. And while that's not a properly estuarine area, they do have a coastal creek there, but I didn't want to let those concerns go unheard or let them just go out into the vacuum, never to be seen again. So I did include that and made note of it that, hey, this is an estuarine, but this is something that came up repeatedly. So I'm trying to be open to including community concerns where they're pointed out. And the way that we're going about this process to develop the plans really shakes out into two main efforts or two main components for the plans. And that is a vulnerability assessment and then the adaptation strategy. So at each of these, for each of these components, we have some touch points for community outreach and engagement so that we are ensuring that we're getting a lot of that feedback that I talked about. But the vulnerability assessment, that starts with a public survey, which transitions into some community listening sessions and followed by some individual interviews. So that's one way that we're engaging with community voices there. And so we did this for Lincoln and Lane counties. We did 4 in Lincoln, 2 in Lane, as far as the listening sessions. We take all of that work and then spend some time looking at all the data and literature that's out there and try to synthesize all of that together to paint a picture of vulnerability for the estuarine areas in that county. Then comes the adaptation strategy. So we also engage with local communities again here through adaptation action workshops, where we say, okay, we heard everything you said to us, we looked at all the literature, and here we think this is what the vulnerabilities are that we should focus on, and this all sound right. And then here's some things we're thinking about doing. And so I mentioned, might be projects that folks already have engaged with, but it could also involve projects that, as we go through this process to understand the vulnerabilities, they naturally, organically arise from our concerns, our conversations, and our reviews. And so I'd say it's about a 60-40 split of those two kinds of projects already thought of versus something we've kind of plucked out of the ether. And sometimes those just come from like, hey, if you had a blank check, or what would you want to do, or what's that tertiary priority that you've been kicking the can on for 20 years, and try to generate some momentum on us and create a path forward to implement. I see Beth asks, how does this work with the Lincoln County Hazard Mitigation Plan? Well, there's not a direct relationship at the moment. I do rely on the NHMPs to help inform some of the vulnerability information and the understanding of where to focus and our efforts, where some of the greater threats are, what some of the vulnerable assets and resources are. For Tillamook, which at the time was updating their NHMP, the Tillamook ERAP got appended to it as an appendix. So it's included there. So that's where that lives for that county. For Lincoln, I don't know if that will be the case, but I'm certainly open to the conversation. So some of the desired outcomes for our process, we can view as short-term and long-term outcomes. We want to make sure that local organizations, local folks have an improved understanding of what are the resilience needs, what are the natural hazard threats, what are their vulnerabilities within their jurisdictional estuarine areas, and help have an understanding of what are the scope, the impacts, the costs, the benefits of potential resilience activities, and how to prioritize them based on a variety of planning contingencies and other information that goes along with that. And then to be empowered to implement those coastal resilience activities and projects, right? So want to, as I said, tee up the ball for the local organizations to implement those. Since TLCD, we're not the ones that are actually doing on the ground implementation of projects like restoration and floodplain reconnection, that kind of thing. Long term, we want partners to be ready to pursue the funding that they need to support those activities. So have well-crafted proposals. A lot of the stuff that we're doing with this community engagement type work helps check a lot of boxes for like NOAA applications for this kind of work. So really helping to tee up the ball for them. And help move all of that forward to meet their multi-year resilience goals, help support other planning efforts and other projects, and integrate, like I said, into other initiatives, whether that's NHMPs or other planning initiatives there locally. And hopefully, can help with us to transition for the areas that need it into maybe starting to think about updating estuary management plans and what would be required in that kind of update, what kinds of things that we need to focus on. So, and in the future, we hope to expand this to other resilience type planning coastline. So real quick, sidestep, one caveat I have from NIFWIF is to focus on nature-based solutions. So probably most folks in the room are familiar with these, but nature-based solutions essentially rely on natural infrastructure to mimic or enhance natural processes. So on a coastal landscape, it might look something like what you see in this graphic here, restoring coastal wetlands, reconnecting historic floodplains, integrating green spaces into urban areas, building setbacks or vegetating dunes, that kind of thing. But the idea here is that at least in a coastal area, the benefits are going to be numerous, but it's going to focus on often in estuaries, attenuating wave energy, redirecting incoming floodwaters, and that kind of thing. It might also involve other benefits like improving water and air quality, reducing erosion, and there's numerous social benefits as well. I don't think I have to really go too deep into that for this room. We all know that including green spaces in urban areas has numerous benefits socially, economically, aesthetically, etc. But one example of kind of like an awesome project or outcome that we're aiming for is the Southern Flow Corridor project. So probably most of you are familiar with it, if not directly participated in it. But this is what I really had in mind when I was thinking, like, oh yeah, look at all these cool resilience type projects that rely on nature-based solutions to, even if on a very, very small scale, could in some way emulate the work done on the Southern Flow Corridor and the benefits that it provided to local communities. So I know it was a very long, drawn out, and even at times contentious process, but outcomes wise, accomplishment, achievement wise, I think this is really something to aim for. And in my mind, this is a great example of the kind of thing to strive for. So a lot of the projects we've identified are not that grand, but this is what it gives me something to aim at. So what are the outcomes so far? So as we wind down here, Lincoln and Lane process will be winding down here early in the summertime. So coming up very soon. So I've had a chance now to sit and think about, well, what have we accomplished? It took me 2 years to do Tillamook and Coos, and that was through the height of COVID. And now Lincoln and Lane, almost 2 years. What have we been able to accomplish, and what do we have to look forward to? So it's quite a number of things. So, first and foremost, I've said several times, the process is led by local community partners and organizations, and it includes, a variety of folks that you see here on the screen: cities, counties, ports, watershed councils, land trusts, the agencies, the universities, the tribes, a variety of nonprofits, and all of our partners in the Coastal Management Program. And it's resulted in a number of engagement opportunities throughout the communities that I mentioned: surveys and listening sessions and workshops and interviews, all this stuff. I've heard hundreds and hundreds of local community voices, and that's really been extremely important. So if I've had a chance to sit and talk with you, which many of you have, your feedback and your perspectives have been really key to the success of this. So, of course, now we have 2 completed plans, the Tillamook and Coos plans, and those live on the DLCD website at the very least, and they can be found other places as well. One outcome we had with the Coos process, so it just so happened that at the same time that I was going through the grant process with NIFWIF, the U of O Institute for Policy Research and Engagement, IPRE, many of you are familiar with, Mike Howard there, was also awarded a FEMA CTP grant to do almost the same kind of thing not bounded by natural or nature-based solutions, but really focused on the Coos Bay estuary only. So he and I partnered for both of our processes, helping one another, relying on each other's efforts. And it worked out really well because the process was inspired by their pilot effort for the cities of Eugene and Springfield. So we were able to run both processes in parallel. And so they produced their Coos Bay Climate Hazards Adaptation Plan, which serves as the companion volume for the Coos County plan. So if you want to see that, it normally lives on the Partnership for Coastal Watersheds website, but that right now is being absorbed into DSL, and so it's down at the moment. But once it comes back up in a few short weeks, that'll be available there as well. So we are also able to identify numerous actions for Tillamook and Coos. We had 71 different projects or actions for resilience that were identified, all in various stages of development. And that doesn't include 50 or so more that were identified just for that Coos plan through IPRE. And then now for Lincoln and Lane, we have around about 60 or so actions that we've been able to identify. So we're in the final stages of refining all the details for those and getting those into the drafts of our plans. And so another outcome was year before last, with all this summer of money coming from the federal government, we were able to curate a set of 8 of those ERAP projects that we identified, pull together a ton of partners to apply for the NOAA Coastal Regional Resilience Challenge that involved 5 estuaries, 9 creeks, and hundreds of acres of work to be done, and said, here's a set of related projects that we could engage with that are landscape scale transformational projects. It included things like Sand Lake Sitka Sedge project, a Salmon Superhighway batch of projects, the Beaver Hill Wetland and Coquille River, and a few others. And so we didn't get that grant, but it was a monumental effort that really helped bring together a lot of the data and information for those projects that was able to be used for other grant applications subsequently. We also had the SURF design competition. So this is the Coastal Estuarine Research Federation. They run a design competition for kind of more nature-based solutions. So I nominated the city of Tillamook, which you can see here is virtually like an island surrounded by floodplain. So we took some of those concerns, elevated it for this design competition, which we had grad students from around the world. There was Virginia and Florida and New Zealand, and these are like design and engineering students, and they came up with their plans for solutions for the city of Tillamook and submitted those for competition. So you can see here, these are some of the examples of the work that was produced by those students, coming up with ideas to help mitigate some of the flood issues for Tillamook. And so we ended up with all of their plans, which then were forwarded to the city of Tillamook. I've not heard much about what became of those. I know Tillamook was going through some turnover with their staff, but I hope that these have been helpful for the city of Tillamook. And lastly, as we're partnering right now for Lincoln and Lane, we're working with OSU, the Cascadia Coast Research Hub, and Oregon Sea Grant to develop or to work on a project that they have going on, which is a USCRP research project to develop a flood model. So a lot of flood models are what we call a bathtub model, where you just fill it like a bathtub and we see where the water goes. Realistically, that's not how the water works on a landscape. So they're developing a more hydrodynamic model so that we can understand what's the contribution from precipitation versus wind versus tides versus storm surge. So this is me, this is them doing it, but we're working in partnership to utilize these models so that we can kind of predict what it will look like in the future if we say, what about sea level rise of 2.5 feet by 2050, plus a storm surge, plus a 1% flood plus a 1% flood. So what would that look like on the landscape? And then what if we restored this 40-acre parcel over here into wetland that could absorb that? How would it affect that flood? So that's what they're trying to figure out right now. And then I'm trying to help them understand, how can we utilize some of those products or those resources in terms of like mapping. So that's really actually two models. One helps us understand where the water will be and how long it'll be there. And the other one helps predict some of those future conditions. So the way that it looks right now, and they're still putting the finishing touches on it, but they're testing it out for Yaquina Bay. So here's here's a model of Yaquina Bay. This is just considering the tides-based model from January 2022 event. And you can see the red dots on the screen there, some of the projects that we've identified for Yaquina Bay. So this is what it looks like just considering tides, but then let's throw in precipitation, river discharge, storm surge, and other effects. And so you can see the areas that are wet there, we're able to model a lot more of the expansive floodplain, or the how far it affects the water on the landscape. And we can also model here not just what gets wet versus what isn't wet, but also how long it's wet. So here we can see or how long each of these areas spent being wet based on that scenario. So this is something that's still in development, but they should be wrapping that up a little later this year. So that's about all I have for you. So we completed Tillamook and Coos. Lincoln and Lane will be completed here in a few short months, and then where to go next is up for debate. So I'm thinking, Douglas and Curry counties seem right for resilience type planning. So I'm hoping that that's where we can focus our energies next. That's all I got for you. Any questions?
Thank you, Moses. Anything? All right. Okay. Thanks a bunch, Moses. All righty, and that leaves us into our last agenda item, which is around the offshore wind energy roadmap and the planning pieces that are coming with that with Cynthia and Jeff. I'll let you two just.
Well, I'm just seeing if Jeff is straddling meetings. So
okay.
Let's see if he's popped in. He should be in here soon. And he's got our PowerPoint up, but I was gonna
Mandy can do it if you need it.
I don't know, Mandy, did he give you a copy of that?
It was not given to me. I was just gonna state.
I could okay, just a minute. Oh, he's okay. I just got a message from him. Let's see if I don't know if I can open it as a read only.
Where is it located?
Yeah, can you just send him a message and have him send it to you?
Yeah, have it and send it.
It's here, I'll send you the
sorry everybody, just give us a second.
Just the lack of coordination.
You can open it as read only, Cynthia.
Yeah, I couldn't for some reason. So, hey, how's everybody doing? I noticed while we're waiting for Jeff and waiting to try to get this open, is that the two people that there is Jeff. Oh my goodness. That the two people that I thought would be nice to have here for our, because as Curry County folks, and it looks like Crystal and Anthony have already dropped out. So we're going to be meeting with Curry County in May, a couple weeks. So I just found that I was kind of bummed to see Crystal and Anthony drop out, but that's okay. We'll talk to them later.
Yep.
Okay, Jeff.
All right. Thanks for being patient. I was in a energy strategy meeting over on the side. Right. I'm going to give just a brief update to you all about where things are with offshore wind and the offshore wind energy roadmap that the state is developing. I'm going to give kind of the high level overview of where we are, where we aren't. And then Cynthia is going to talk more specifically about some of the work we've been doing with local jurisdictions as part of our enforceable policy analysis that is required under the same legislation that is causing us to make this roadmap. So first off, if y'all remember last year, there was the culmination of about a 5-year process led by the federal government through Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to try to find places offshore that were least conflict where they could offer leases out in federal waters to explore offshore wind. Not the same thing as building offshore wind. There would still be a number of years of study and developing environmental analyses and such. But they wanted to do the leasing step. We reviewed it as a state coastal program, and the leasing action specifically, we were able to get to a conditional concurrence, a yes if, that had a lot of riders on it about protecting the environment out there when they're doing their studies, about involving the state in any information they're collecting to make sure it's the right information they would need down the road, some different engagement expectations of them with the public and tribes and fishing groups and others. So things looked like they were going to happen, and then they didn't happen. 4 of the 5 bidders withdrew their interest. The governor requested that BOEM postpone their leasing or pause until the state could complete an offshore wind roadmap where we kind of took a look at ourselves and made sure that our policies were up to the challenge and that we were fully ready. And so BOEM did postpone leasing. And then their deadline expired in about December of last year. And then come January, we had a new administration that on day 1 put out an executive memorandum officially withdrawing all areas of the Outer Continental Shelf in federal waters from leasing for offshore wind. And they're also taking a look at the leases that already exist. So there are 5 down in California right now, and taking a look at those to see if they have, ways to either claw them back or can they stay or what. So the bottom line is that in Oregon right now, we have no leases for offshore wind. We have no proposed projects for offshore wind. And it kind of looks like we have a period of years here where we should not expect to see new leases for offshore wind. Why are we talking about offshore wind? And the reason is that in the last legislative session in 24, House Bill 4080 passed. And this was at the height of when BOEM was moving forward with leasing. We thought it was imminent, and we said we need to make sure we're ready. And so House Bill 4080 included labor standards that would be applicable to offshore wind projects. And it also directed DLCD, because we administer the coastal program, and land use agency, to lead the development of an offshore wind roadmap. Other states, California, New York, Maine, Connecticut, New Jersey, other states have developed roadmaps as a step along the way, kind of early on, to let them be coordinated. And Oregon was looking to do the same. The legislature also directed us to take a look at our enforceable policies. And that is, if you've heard any of us talk about federal consistency before, it's the state's big lever when it comes to federal permits out in federal waters for something like offshore wind. And it all revolves around what policies we have on the books that we can use to address effects that we care about. And so what the legislature asked us to do was to take a look at those policies at the state level, as well as the local policies that are part of our coastal program. So comprehensive plans and codes, to see how well they are prepared for and addressing the effects from offshore wind. So House Bill 4080, in defining what they meant by a roadmap, said that it should define standards to be considered in processes related to offshore wind development and approval. And you can see there on the screen, there were a number of topic areas or objectives that were highlighted as areas that the roadmap really needs to cover. And that includes stakeholder engagement, supporting local and regional coastal communities, including both creation of new economic opportunity and sustaining existing local and regional economies, a focus on the workforce, a focus on protecting tribal, cultural, and archaeological resources, culturally significant viewsheds, and then kind of as a general topic, other interests of tribes. Obviously, protection of the environment and marine species is a major objective, as well as just achieving state energy policies. So I hopped the fence from federal consistency to help coordinate the development of this roadmap last September. By November, we had kicked off, we'd recruited and kicked off an offshore wind roadmap roundtable of about 50 members, plus another 30 or so agency advisors. So a pretty large table that we tried to make representative of a diverse set of interests and perspectives. And that group has been meeting monthly. We last met April 15th. We're meeting down in Brookings on May 15th, which I think maybe Cynthia mentioned. And we're meeting through June. We're going to take a pause over the summer so I can do some writing and then come back together in the fall. We've also been involved in tribal engagement from the beginning. We have established a separate tribes-only table where we're discussing interests of tribes, and we are going to be continuing those conversations throughout. We've established a few working groups that splintered off from the main roundtable. There's one related to community benefits and what enforceable agreements might look like between communities and developers and how to make those enforceable. There's one about spatial planning, this idea of should the state be leading spatial planning out in federal waters? Should we take a look out there and kind of proactively put our stamp on where we think offshore wind best fits our policies? And then one around a research agenda. What are the questions that are specific to Oregon that we need to solve, and what kind of collaborative should we build around that so that there could be a broad scientific consensus in the state? We're also doing some community engagement work. We're going to be doing some focus groups up and down the coast, trying to get to communities that maybe don't have all day to spend in these roundtable meetings so that we can make sure we're gathering those perspectives and incorporating them. And then we are doing just some standard evening public meetings as a chance to, stick our heads up and look around. We had the first one, was that last week, in Seaside, and May 14th, we will be down in Brookings. And then we're aiming for June 16th in Coos Bay. So that'll be 3 here in the spring. And then the idea is to have a roadmap draft that goes out for full public review in spring of 26. And we would, I hope, do some public meetings around that as well so that people can be familiar with the document before submitting a roadmap to the legislature about middle of next year. Now, all this is predicated on us getting a bill passed this session, because the original House bill gave us a deadline of this September and told us that we could only spend money up until the end of this June. But it turns out that the engagement work here takes longer than that. So we're hoping to get a time extension to just use the money that we've already got. We've been, as I said, meeting every month, getting pretty good attendance, both from the roundtable members and agencies, as well as public attendees. One of those pictures you can see, a group of high school students came, a class came, and they participated in a future visioning exercise that we all did together, which was great and gave us some sense of what the waypoints are along the path to the future that might lead us to offshore wind if we can do it right. So yeah, we've been doing that. Every meeting is open to the public, and we have public comment opportunity at each one. So we're really trying to have an open process here. We have a website where all the information for our meetings is placed, including our meeting packets, YouTube videos of the meetings themselves, anything we have about our public meetings, and we're working on a story map to help tell the story. And the roadmap itself, over and above just this looking at our policies, we're also trying to understand what are those strategic steps that the state could take to be ready for offshore wind if we can find a way to get there. And the way I keep talking about this is there's a difference between defining the path and choosing to walk the path. And what we're trying to do with the roadmap is to define what that best path could be, so that then there can be decisions made out after the roadmap. The roadmap provides recommendations that then others could act upon. The roadmap itself, as I mentioned, we did this alternative future visioning exercise early on to try to understand, what would a future look like if we had offshore wind and we didn't regret it? And what would a future look like if we didn't have offshore wind and we didn't regret it? And then what are the waypoints along that path? So we're going to kind of start there, do this policy assessment to figure out where we might have gaps, where we need to take some action over the next 4 or 5 years to amend our policies, to strengthen language, that kind of stuff. And then those strategic planning opportunities, where are the actions we can take, the investments we can make in our time or money? This gap analysis, and Cynthia is going to talk about this a little bit more when she takes the stage here. We started from just the universe of effects that we'd gathered from all the comments over the last 5 years of the BOEM process, as well as conversations we had with our roundtable, just trying to get our arms around what are all the things that are out there that we might want to have a policy. And then we took a look at that effects list against our list of policies and said, where are we already covered? Where do we already feel strong? And we're now at about that third chevron where we're talking about, based on the effects that are out there and the policies we've got on the books, where might there be some gaps that then we can come up with some strategies for how to address them? And we're working on that list right now. Some of the things we're talking about in the roadmap conversation that are, I would say, not yet settled, but actively being considered. As I mentioned, we're actually trying to build a picture of a path and trying to identify what the waypoints are, what the steps are along the way. And we have a draft that's out there right now that anybody can comment on and put their stamp on. We are working on this policy gaps assessment that could lead to recommendations for planning at the state or local level or policy change. I also mentioned we're talking about, should the state do our own kind of spatial planning inventory, where we start out there in federal waters and work our way in all the way up to land, to where there would need to be a handshake between cables from offshore to onshore, and just trying to preemptively identify where those friction points would be with existing policy to then guide avoidance measures in the future. We're talking about what it means to responsibly manage uncertainty and risk, and what kinds of accountability guarantees there can be when you're trying to make decisions where you don't know the full outcome. The research agenda, as I mentioned, is being developed right now by our Ocean Policy Advisory Council, and we'll be working on where that goes next. As I mentioned, also the community benefit conversations. How do we organize and how do we even identify the communities that could be part of those conversations, and what are the expectations around it? There's also this question of what would it take for developers who decided that it wasn't worth the risk last year if the state wants this power. And there was just a projection today saying that the projected energy demand is double what we thought it was a year ago when you look forward. So we know we need electricity. If the state is interested in offshore wind as an option, what does the industry need in order for it to feel like the risk is manageable? And then finally, we've been talking about what exit ramps might look like. Are there points in the process where, if we're not getting information that we need, or if there's an agreement that we need to be in place that isn't there yet, where and how can we pull over to the side until and unless those conditions are met? And what would that look like? Just for fun, Here are the pictures of the waypoint path that I was describing as they stand. It's broken out into the different phases of offshore wind development, starting from kind of where we are right now, which is kind of nowhere. For the next few years, we're looking at probably no leasing occurring. And so what are those opportunities that we could take right now to prepare for any eventuality? And then if we did get to a place where leasing was on the table again, what are those things that we would need to see as prerequisites before we are ready to walk through the gate of leasing? And so there are points there. These are available on our roadmap website, and they'll be in, there's actually a draft roadmap that I'm going to be putting out, I hope on Friday, just as a discussion draft so that people can kind of see where the conversation's gotten to so far. And then into the permitting stage, which would happen about 5 years after leasing. Again, there's a whole satchel of things that we would need to have in place before we would be ready to move forward. And then you can get into the later stages of what do we want to see in place before, like after a permit, when the state's role is officially kind of done, but how can we maintain a hook on that process as it goes on in time? So part of the conversations we're talking about, we are interested in local community feedback on what your needs are, what you see the effects being from offshore wind, if there are conditions that need to be satisfied in order for Oregon to be ready for it. And with that, I'm going to pass the ball to Cynthia.
Great, thanks. That was a good segue. Yes, so we still want your input. Anyway, Cynthia Smith, if I haven't met you already, I'm working with Jeff on this roadmap. In particular, I'm looking at or working on the enforceable policy assessment and also an agency capacity assessment. As Jeff noted, House Bill 4080 from the 2024 legislative session tasked DLCD to work on this enforceable policy assessment as the policies may relate to offshore wind energy development. Next slide. I'm going to go, since there's some new people, some of this is a repetition from our fall meeting, but I thought it might be helpful to get everybody up to speed. Because of the House Bill directive, we are consulting with our network agencies, our state agencies, and also our local governments. If you attended the fall network meeting, we talked about starting this assessment. Well, we have met with most of you, and this assessment is still ongoing. And a lot of our focus when it comes to offshore wind tends to be in the ocean, but when it comes to the local jurisdictions especially, there can be a lot occurring near or onshore. And so having a conversation with most of our counties and cities and some of our state agencies regarding what applicable policies for land-based components might be happening as related to the industry. So yeah, our local plans and codes play a big part in the development. The next slide. So when we met with counties and cities, and we continue to meet with them, we are asking we want to think about the whole community and benefits and consequences when it comes to offshore wind development. We are looking at the effects to coastal uses and resources. For the local and the land-based side of things, on the right side are just some examples of onshore components, including cable landings, maybe grid connections or substation upgrades, whether they're small or large, transmission line upgrades or new ones. Ports also play a vital role in the supply chain, and they include manufacturing and assembly, installation, and maybe even just maintenance and service fleets. So a port may not have all of those things, but they may just have one. Your port may not be able to handle the manufacturing, but you might be able to have a service fleet that comes out of your port. So these are things that we want local communities to think about, and as it relates to the enforceable policies that are on the books and where there might be gaps. On the left side of this diagram are more of the offshore components. We are looking at this list and the effects to those coastal, ocean, and coastal uses and resources with our state partners and also the roundtable members. Our assessment a completed assessment will go over, kind of identify gaps and appropriate mechanisms for addressing where these gaps might be. Addressing the gaps like rulemaking, local comprehensive plan amendments, and maybe new statutes or amended statutes. Next slide. Since there are some new people to coastal planning and online, I thought it might benefit you to go over some of the basics. This graphic gives you an idea of how and what are enforceable policies. But before we get into that, a little refresher on if you're new to federal consistency and enforceable policies. As I think Meg and Jeff have talked briefly about, Oregon is part of the National Coastal Management Program, and we do have a coastal management zone that goes from the ridge of the coastal range and then westward out into the ocean, 3 nautical miles. That's the territorial sea. And part of this is the federal consistency. It's a review process that coastal states, such as Oregon, undertake every time a federal activity is proposed in that state's coastal management zone. These federal activities are reviewed against what are called enforceable policies. So as shown here, enforceable policies are built upon these 3 main components. First, our foundational document. And then on top of that, we utilize a mix of state laws and rules, statewide planning goals, and lots of local plans and regulations. And of all that, we take the strongest of those the strongest of all that, and those become enforceable policies, and they have to meet specific criteria and are approved by NOAA. Next slide. And I just wanted to show you enforceable policy do's and don'ts, just to get an idea of that. It has to have mandatory language, it needs to be clear. One that is always important to note is cannot discriminate against any particular coastal user or federal agency, and you cannot hinder the national interest objectives. So this is just a kind of a real basic checklist when it comes to looking at what are enforceable policies and what will be accepted as an enforceable policy. That's real high level. And then next slide. This is just a list of all the key enforceable policies. There's probably more I'm missing here. And of course, we would run out of space if we listed all the local government plans and codes that are identified as state enforceable policies, but just gives you a general list of those. So next slide. So since November, we have met with 7 counties and about 20 cities. Most of you we have met with or a representative of your county and city. We've had some good discussion, and we've got people to think about how the onshore components would be addressed with their particular land use review codes, development codes, and whatnot. We have asked staff to do an internal audit of sorts on their own codes. And although I have notes from those meetings, and I acknowledge that you have limited capacity at the local level, as Jeff had noted, if you have time to review your policies and complete the form I sent you, or just provide any kind of feedback to me, that would be great. I'm still accepting comments from jurisdictions. So if you have time, love to hear from you. And also if you have other questions, comments, concerns about any of this kind of development. Most of you have seen the very long list of effects to coastal resources and coastal uses. And so there's a lot there, but only a small chunk of them relate to local codes and policies. In May, we hope to have a productive meeting with Curry County and the 3 cities in that region, Port Orford, Gold Beach, and Brookings. So Anthony and Crystal, maybe we'll see you in May. So next slide. So at the local level, what we found is working is that a lot of your codes are working just fine. You cover a lot of those onshore components. Your coastal shoreland policies, maybe beaches and dune policies that might be regulated by a state agency, they all seem to be working pretty well. Geologic hazard zones, it was good to hear that, I can't remember which jurisdiction, they're going to be updating their hazard zones, so that will be helpful to know. And that a lot of your code has land-based components already built in, so utilities or substations or development standards, maybe even compatibility standards when a development is going to be next to residential zoning. So that all this seems to be working pretty well. So the next slide, please. Potential gaps that we're seeing at the local level, as noted, I think was the few of you earlier in this meeting that, yeah, some of your comprehensive plans need to be updated. Estuary policies may need to be updated. Some of them are being updated now or just were updated. So getting those brought in as an enforceable policy would be important. We did hear that sometimes policies they've done away with the mandatory shall or must language, and so they are no longer meeting the enforceable policy standard. So that needs to be that could be a gap now that your code has become less restrictive. Some of the other gaps are the cable landing provisions. Some are lacking that. We've heard from especially Reedsport and Douglas County about energy storage facility. And what we've learned from the project that is looking at solar farms in the eastern part of the state, that energy storage facility, the terminology is kind of lacking at the state level in state code. So that is something that could be fixed. Decommissioning and waste at all phases could be worked on a little bit to fill in a gap there. And then also workforce housing. And another concern is infrastructure policies. And I think some of what's listed here can tie in with community benefit agreements and community benefits in other ways. Next slide. Other comments that I've received from the local jurisdictions is community outreach, education and outreach, and knowing that the community doesn't completely understand all the components and everything that goes into offshore wind. They may only think of big wind turbines out in the ocean, and having some education around that would be beneficial. Communities do want to see new industry or other economic development for the most part. They want to have it responsibly developed with community engagement. There's definitely a sensitivity to the viewshed of the ocean. Workforce housing and infrastructure are also crucial. Some places are really needing an infrastructure upgrade. There's land availability can be an issue. Sometimes you have the land, but it's not in the right location. Community benefit agreements, as noted. And one jurisdiction in particular really wanted to make sure that they maintained local review. And power resiliency is also really important to the coastal communities. Fire danger as well for, say, transmission lines and other things that we have seen catch on fire, wildfires in other areas. Next slide. So we've been also working with the state agencies. Most of what you see here, we've been trying to reach out to, some more than others. So quite a number, and we are working a little bit more extensively on some of their, with their expertise on some of the effects to coastal uses and resources. And next slide. And what's working there is our statewide planning goal 19, our territorial sea plan is doing pretty good. We have a lot of archaeological, historical, and cultural site standards, wildlife and habitat mitigation standards, ocean shore policies, removal and fill standards. The list goes on. We've got a lot of great stuff that's working. So there's stuff that works at the state level. Next slide. But we are finding some gaps and there are some concerns. Territorial sea plan, some of the ecological resource standard is spatially limited. So it'd be nice to have it more general and broad so it can cover more areas. Waste deposition plan to support feasibility on decommissioning plans. There's all kinds of stuff written in here. I don't want to go over it all, but you can get an idea that this is just a small list of what we're looking at for gaps or concerns, including water quality, invasive species, and there's some cable standard stuff in there. Next slide. Also socioeconomic, tribal uses and or resources on onshore areas, sacred tribal view role, port space protection. There is a good example that we're gonna look into it from California. And then apply fisheries use protection standards to project phases, not that it's not under, I think, Territory Sea Plan. Labor and workforce standards, like Jeff had mentioned, housing impacts, among a lot of other stuff. So Jeff, I don't know if you have any other things to chime in with the state level stuff, because I know you went over these slides before.
I think for the sake of today's conversation, we could probably just leave it at this, but if people have questions or want to follow up, leave a chat.
So deep into the enforceable policy and gap analysis. And that is all I have. Next slide. Does anybody have any questions for Jeff or myself or me? Question in the chat. Did we say energy storage facility in Douglas County? There was somebody interested in a site just outside of Reedsport, looking at the site for battery energy storage. I don't know where that lies now. But yes, it was very much a discussion when we were meeting with Reedsport and Douglas County.
Anything else? Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you both, Cynthia and Jeff. Appreciate you being able to squeeze us in, Jeff. I know you were double booked. Well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Our next meeting will be this fall, sometime in the October area. My guess is it's still going to be virtual, but we'll see. And we'll do the whole coast again, because it is kind of nice having everybody hear the same thing. Although we can revisit that, I suppose. And then if you have any topics that you are thinking of right now or think of over the course of the next few months that you'd like to see on here, we can make sure that it gets on the agenda and we get the right people in the room to help discuss the topic, whatever it might be. And you can reach out to Brett or Hui for sure as your regional reps, but you can always reach out to any of us if you're just thinking about it in a random conversation. And didn't really get any homework out of this particular meeting today, and that's not a terrible thing. But we have recorded this, and so if there's any part that you want to share with staff on one of the particular topics that was discussed, that'll be available to you. And so I think with that, unless there's anything else, I want to thank all my folks for their hard work and for presenting today, and all of you for attending and sticking with us. And we will be talking to all of you soon. Yes, definitely get outside for a few minutes for sure. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.